This is Atomic Shinobi, and today I'm going to narrate first part of What If Kid Naruto and Gaara were secretly trained by Kakashi. If you enjoy this video, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Even the most resilient and strong people occasionally need to unwind. When all they want is to come home to a warm, home, cooked dinner and a loving family after a hard day at work. However, it appears that at the end of the day, not everyone is back to those two things. Some return home to find it deserted, dark, and lonely. No one to welcome them, provide solace, or even bring them a hot plate. Naruto Uzumaki has lived the latter kind of life every day for as long as he can remember. He pledged that his life would not stay the same for very long, even though he had never known the difference and maybe never would. Naruto was not your typical ninja boy. Training. In fact, it would be inaccurate to describe him as entirely human. You see, there once was a dark, kept secret that its possessor was completely unaware of. He had been the target of hateful glares and whispers for as long as he could remember. People would stare at him wherever he went, as if they wished he would just vanish from view. He went through all of this alone, with no one by his side to console him or explain why he was being looked at and made fun of. Since no one in the village genuinely cared about him, where could he turn? The elderly man, the Sandame, was all he had. The only person who genuinely desired his company was the Lord Third Hokage, and he would never be honest with him about that. That wasn't totally accurate, though. There was still one more person, but Naruto had never really spoken to him beyond one-sided exchanges. When he was little, he had been his shadow. All he knew about him was that he had silver hair and that he wore a mask. He was an elite court. And remember, it was Dog. Dog had been his devoted friend for a while, but one very sad day, his devoted shadow vanished, disappearing seemingly forever. Naruto, being the innocent youngster that he was, thought nothing of going to the park by himself on this typical day. Dog hadn't informed him that he wasn't allowed to go outside alone. Dog actually said nothing but his name and his commands. 4-year-old Naruto limped along the cobblestone sidewalk in the direction of the neighboring park. Only a 5-minute stroll from the small apartment building the Sandame had claimed as his permanent residence, until he made the decision to move to a larger one or purchase a home of his own when he was older. One building, or more accurately, the imposing gate at the entrance, drew his attention as he passed by other large houses and structures. On top of it was an odd-looking symbol that was engraved. It had a red, white, and blue color scheme and resembled a mushroom-shaped balloon. He watched a number of people enter and exit the huge gate wearing that same symbol on their clothes. He thought they were all related to each other somehow because they all looked alike. The young boy tried to solve this mystery like pieces of a puzzle, but soon he noticed that the people with the dark hair and eyes were beginning to stare at him in that all too familiar way. Naruto swallowed nervously as he quickly left the spotlight behind and made his way back to where he had come from. The park served as a small haven from the older people's looks at him. Not that many of the kids looked at him that way, but they also never really approached him for some reason. He'd once overheard a parent warning their child not to approach him because, should they let their guard down, he was like some kind of incurable illness. Why were those remarks made by others? Was he bothersome in any way? Naruto went to the one area of the park where he was certain there wouldn't be many people as soon as he arrived. The lone willow tree, situated in a remote area of the park. No one would know that he was sitting in the upper branches there, watching the clouds drift away. His favorite place was only known to Dog, and Dog wasn't present at the moment. He felt a sense of freedom that came only from being so high above the rest of the world that it seemed so small, perched on the tallest branch from which he could see nearly the entire block. As the fluffy white clouds soared into the distance, out of sight and out of mind, how serene they appeared. The aroma of 1,000 flowers and what could only be called the essence of nature wafted in a light breeze. With a small smile on his tiny lips, Naruto closed his eyes and took a deep breath. The last thing he saw was a cloud shaped like a frog. How he cherished the floral scent. Naruto let out a startled wah as he realized he was about to tumble off the branch he was leaning on. He looked up, confused to see a starry sky and a much stronger breeze than before. Now, as it blew fiercely across the earth, it had a bitter sting. Naruto shivered violently, realizing that he had fallen asleep and that he had no idea how late it was. The 4-year-old scowled as he quickly descended and headed home. If there was one thing he'd learned from living alone, it was that people would probably try to harm him if they saw him at night. He was determined not to let that happen again because it had happened before and Dog was not there to save him this time. Naruto, who had been staying close to the shadows, believed he was safe when he saw his apartment building come into sight, but something unexpected happened. He was thrown forward by an enraged shout from behind and a powerful blow to his small torso, barely having time to get his arms in front of him to cushion the blow to the concrete. The small boy moaned, straining to get himself upright. "You filthy little creature. Everything that happened was your fault. You are the cause of their deaths. You're going to pay now for everything I went through." The inebriated man let out an exclamation as he launched himself forward once more, backhanding Naruto into a nearby garbage can. With his lip now broken, Naruto struggled to get back up and run in the direction of his house, his haven, and his deliverance. But the angry drunkard picked him up until they were face to face, grabbing hold of his beige t-shirt. "Monstrous. You're dead now." The man was about to strike the terrified boy with a deadly sharp knife that he had taken from his back pocket when he heard what sounded like 100 birds, felt a searing pain that engulfed him, and then nothing. Naruto closed his eyes and cried scared, salty tears, waiting for the end, which never came. Suddenly, the grip on his shirt loosened, and gravity dragged him back down to the floor. However, before he could strike it, he was grabbed by two powerful arms that held him to a solid chest. Startled, he turned to face his kidnapper. He had never felt more relieved to see his devoted Shadow's dog mask, which was always white and red. Once more, Dog saved his life right before the end. With pent-up emotion from his all-consuming fear, the 4-year-old released it in a way that only a child could. He wept with relief that he would live to see another sunrise as he clung to his rescuer's gray armor. "Thank you, dog." Between sobs, Naruto managed to whimper out. Naruto's small frame was unable to withstand the fear he had just been thrust through, and soon he was unconscious. Dog carried the sleeping boy to his apartment, laughing softly on the way. After finishing his assignment, he went back to see how the boy was doing and discovered that he wasn't in the room. He heard some fighting and went outside to see what it was that finally infuriated him. Dog executed his signature move quickly, impaling the inebriated fool through the chest. Just one more second and the assailant would have fatally wounded the small child with blonde hair. It was beyond him how anyone could even consider hurting the little boy. After dealing with the Kyuubi, the boy was left with no option but to become the beast's jailer. Dog took his time assessing his wounds as he was laid down on the small bed, grimacing as he saw the ugly purple and yellow bruises that were already forming on his torso from where the bastard had most likely kicked him. His lip was broken, and there was a dark blue bruise directly beneath his left eye. He had been dealt a blow by that bastard, and now his hasty demise seemed insufficient for the suffering he had inflicted upon his little charge. Dog took off his mask, sighed deeply, and looked pitifully at the little boy. He had let this boy down by not responding quickly enough to stop such injuries from occurring. The young man's mask was dark underneath, but you could still make out some of his facial structure now that it was removed, and his mismatched eyes had a particularly stern expression. Dog had the eyes of a cold killer and was a young man of about 16. Gradually getting up from the tiny bed, Dog turned to face the blonde boy again and couldn't help but feel guilty about what had happened tonight. Considering what had happened to his one and only son, his sensei was undoubtedly turning in his grave. In terms of biology, though, his sensei had told him on multiple occasions that he saw in Dog a son that he hoped to have alongside the one who would eventually be born to help guide him and be a brother whenever he needed it. Ever since Naruto was brought to this apartment, Dog has taken care of him whenever he could, as a way of honoring his sensei. Initially, the boy was being watched over by the regular shinobi, but it was discovered that many of them still harbored resentment, so the Anbu Corps removed the regulars from all contact with the child in order to ensure his safety. Considering that Naruto had been called away for an assignment, someone ought to have been keeping an eye on him. After donning his mask once more, Dog exited the room and surfaced on the Ninja Ops rooftop before flying in the direction of the Hokage Tower. Every single wound that Naruto sustained that evening was going to be covered by someone. "Canine, come on in." As Dog entered, he heard the aged voice of the Sandaime Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, coming from the other side of the door. After the door shut, the Sandaime inhaled deeply from his pipe and then fixed the young shinobi with his worn-out, fatigued gaze. "This evening has been quite the commotion. Naruto's apartment building is nearby. Would you please elaborate?" Dog nodded, removed his mask, and sank into the chair across from the Sandaime. "It was going to require some time." "I see. You know what would happen if the villagers discovered the truth about what had happened. Many of the villagers will still hold Naruto accountable for the man's death even if they do not demand retaliation because none will pursue an Anbu. I understand how much the boy means to you, but I believe it's best if you avoid him. Dog looked up from his chair, alarmed, a panicked expression in his eyes. Lord Hokage, sir, you cannot expect me to accomplish that. I have an obligation to Sensei to keep an eye on Naruto. Relax and pay attention. Naruto is still a young child and won't likely remember much about you in the future. I'll assign whoever you trust to watch over him, and I'll track down and discipline anyone who neglected to keep an eye on the boy this evening. But for the time being, you are unable to communicate with Naruto. That's what your Hokage has ordered. If peace is to return, things have to be this way. Dog will also no longer be in commission as an Anbu member. What? Dog let out a startled exclamation. I have to provide a killer because the people will demand one. Dog was found guilty and removed as of right now. But in about a year, Kakashi Hatake will return from a protracted mission. Kakashi, you will be placed back in your place as a Jonin and will resume working with your fellow shinobi as soon as you return. Is everything understood? Sarutobi regarded the young man in front of him with narrowed, sage-like eyes and asked calmly. Dog took in everything that was said and realized what the Sandaime was trying to say. Examine beneath the underneath. Naruto was no longer in Dog's grasp, but Kakashi Hatake was. Kakashi got up and gave his mask to the Hokage while grinning. It would appear that he would not require it anymore. Crystal, Lord Third Hokage. He started taking the first of many steps today toward achieving his goals. His ultimate goal was to become Hokage, but everyone had smaller aspirations and goals in addition to the bigger one. It wouldn't matter if he completed it before or after realizing his lifetime ambition, he would reach all of his objectives. Each and every last one. But first things first. His teacher would not be impressed if he arrived late for the first day of classes, so he had to get to school on time. Naruto raced through the crowded morning streets in a hurry to reach the academy. At last, he reached the age of 6, old enough to enroll in the Ninja Academy, and he was determined not to blow this one and only chance to start the path toward becoming Hokage. His excitement for the day did not waver, not even in response to all the derision he received from onlookers as he hurried by. He was so fast that he didn't see the tall man reading a book informally on the street in front of the academy until he collided with him. Naruto cried out, gripping his pounding skull with his hands, "Oof! Ah, my head." When Naruto quickly got to his feet after realizing he had bumped into someone, he discovered it was a shinobi. Oh no. At times, shinobi were the worst. Naruto started apologizing to the downed shinobi. "Oh gosh. Sorry, I was in hurry to get to class and I didn't see you there, Mr. Promise." He seemed to be in a daze. The shinobi looked up, shaking off the brief headache, and saw a blond boy with dark blue shorts and a black shirt with the Uzumaki symbol in the middle colored white. The shinobi got up and brushed off the dust that had stuck to him after his fall. He picked up his orange book and gave the boy a vague smile that he couldn't see. Carefree, the shinobi said, "It's all right. I should have been paying more attention. Say, aren't you Naruto?" The reflexive tensing up that occurred as soon as strangers recognized him was automatic. Naruto's mistrust of people had grown since Dog vanished and other Anbu ninja began keeping an eye on him. With a cautious, yeah, have we met Mr. expression, Naruto pretended not to notice. The man went on, beaming, "No, can't say we have, but the Hokage sure has told me a lot about you, little one." Although the man was pleasant enough, Naruto would have felt a little more at ease around him if he hadn't been wearing the dark mask that covered half of his face. However, learning that the old man had told this stranger about him had to imply that this man was a Hokage friend. In the interim, he would be pleasant. "Really? The old man told you about me?" A slightly taken aback Naruto questioned. "Yup. He told me you wanted to be Hokage someday. I think you got it in ya, kid, so train hard." With stars in his eyes, Naruto gazed at the one-eyed, silver-haired shinobi, wide-eyed. Aside from the elderly man, he was the first to inform him that he had a chance to become Hokage. Nobody ever gave him any credit. "You really think so? Oh man, this is so awesome. Thanks, mister, you just made my day." The shinobi chuckled and simply gave the boy a small, endearing smile. His sensei was staring back at him with that same upbeat, bright blue gleam when he peered into the little boy's eyes. A building behind him erupted in a loud, obnoxious bell ring, and the older man simply stared curiously down at the blond boy who had become a statue of frozen shock at the sound. "Well, looks like your class just started, I surmise, so I suggest you hurry before you're late even more." The boy just sighed melancholily and peered fearfully at the academy. So that was his wonderful day. The shinobi continued, smiling at how sad the little boy appeared. Since it was kind of my fault for detaining you, how about I meet you here once your classes are done for the day and treat you to lunch? That appeared to have the desired effect, as Naruto was once more gazing up at him with a broad, hopeful smile. Yeah, if we can get ramen. The shinobi laughed and nodded yes. Naruto abruptly halted his sprint towards the building to turn and face the man, who gave him a questioning glance in return. Naruto laughed brightly and said, "Say what's your name, mister? I've been talking to ya, but I don't know your name." The shinobi with one eye and silver hair replied, "Hitaki Kakashi," a faint smile obscured by cloth and defying gravity. Naruto waved and began to run once more. "Nice to meet ya, Kakashi. See ya after school." "Yeah, see ya later." Kakashi waved back, revealing a hidden smile behind his one visible eye. Naruto was late for the first day of school, but that didn't stop him from grinning broadly. He had someone waiting for him to go out to ramen once his classes were over. It was obvious to him that today was going to be extraordinary. He heard the teacher calling roll as he got closer to the door. Naruto swallowed his nerves and stumbled into the spacious classroom, pushing open the door. With everyone's attention on him, he felt like an animal in a zoo. "A brown-haired shinobi asked, looking at the boy with a hint of annoyance. Ahem. Naruto Uzumaki, I presume? One child had to be there at all times, and it had to be him." Naruto nodded, remaining silent while he awaited the teacher's next words. Luckily, his good fortune had not yet run out, and the teacher merely gestured for him to take a seat without saying anything more. The majority of the seats had been occupied since he had arrived last. There were only 2 left, and the closest one was standing next to a girl with blonde hair who appeared a little irritated about something. Naruto moved in her direction and let out a soft sigh. Is this seat taken?" The blonde shook her head, not bothering to look at him, and moved her bag to make room for him to sit. Naruto grinned and said, "Thank you," but the girl avoided eye contact. "No problem." The girl with platinum blonde hair sighed melancholically and turned to face something. Bewildered, Naruto turned to face the 2 teachers in the front who, for some reason, were glaring at him. "Now that you're all here. My name is Amino Iruka and shall be addressed as Iruka. Sensei. This fellow next to me is my assistant teacher Mizuki, and the 2 of us will be teaching you guys for the next 6 years to be the best ninjas you can be." With such passion in his voice, Naruto couldn't help but smile at the shinobi with the scarred nose. He certainly seemed like the kind of guy he could get along with. "Now class, open your books with the title history on it and we will begin our first lesson for the day." Naruto slid to his side and peered down at the empty wooden floor by his desk, devoid of a backpack. He had a sudden realization that books. Backpack. On the table. There was a faint thump and a faint moan in the back corner of the room, where one of the tardy students was mentally berating himself for leaving his belongings at home in his hurry. The boy next to her was hitting himself in the head, and when the short, platinum, blonde girl with a red clip in her hair heard the noise, she looked at him puzzled. His books were gone from his memory. She sighed, tapped his shoulder, and was shocked to see the boy turn to face her with stunning, brilliant blue eyes. The girl swallowed her sudden nerves and steeled herself, fighting back a blush. "Hey Naruto, right?" Naruto nodded and cocked a head, slightly taken aback at the girl's address. The girl, trying not to be overheard, whispered, "You forgot your books, didn't you?" Feeling embarrassed at being discovered, Naruto whispered back, Yeah. I was in a hurry to get here and forgot them on the table." The girl smiled and smiled. "Well, you can share mine, I don't mind." She then put the big book between their 2 seats. For the second time that day, Naruto was shocked, so he just nodded and tried to follow the lecture by looking at the book that the friendly girl was holding. Still, he couldn't help but notice how adorable she was, and soon he was fighting a blush that threatened to take over his face. It was becoming a better and better day. Happily, Iruka. Sensei abruptly ended the lesson and instructed the students to follow him outside. Naruto found himself walking beside the girl who had volunteered to share her books with him as they all closed in behind him. Realizing that he didn't know her name, he wanted to thank her appropriately. Shadily, Naruto rubbed the back of his head with his hand and said, "Say I wanted to thank you for sharing your books with me. It was very nice of you. Sorry, but I don't know your name." The girl smiled back at him, matching his own smile. "I'm Ino Yamanaka. Nice to meet you, Naruto." Grinning broadly, he said, "Nice to meet you, Ino-chan. Let's be friends, okay?" As they followed the class outside to what looked like a training field behind the school. "Sounds good. I'll introduce you to my other friends later." Before Naruto could say anything more, Sensei spoke and told the students to divide into two groups. Okay. Iruka said, looking around the group of kids, well, to make it fair, how about I have two students be team captains and they can pick their teams? How about Shikamaru and Sasuke? You two come up here and take turns picking your team, mates. The corresponding boys walked to the front and turned to face their classmates, letting out two identical sighs. Lazy Shikamaru said, this is such a drag. You go first, Uchiha. The boy was slouching as he walked, his black ponytail cropped short. Okay, I'll take the guy wearing glasses. I apologize for not knowing your name. It's your turn, Nara. Sasuke, the boy with short black hair that was spiked in the back, answered with a tiny smile on his face. Shikamaru called out, bored and completely heartless, Choji. The boy approached him, carrying a bag of chips, and sat down beside him. Guy with the red shirt. Kiba. Sasuke pauses to look around the crowd to see if anyone isn't swooning over him. Unfortunately, most of the girls were jumping up and down to get his attention, so they were obstructing his view. Particularly, two girls. One with blonde hair and the other with pink. Were excitedly raising their hands in the hopes of being chosen. He finally chose Hyuga-san, after realizing that she was the only person who wasn't trying to get his attention. Furthermore, her family's jutsu might come in useful for whatever the sensei had in store. Shikamaru called out the next member of his team as soon as the Hyuga girl moved to stand behind Sasuke, sensing the death glares on her persona. No, grumbling that she wasn't on Sasuke's side, Ino walked away from Naruto's side and stood next to Choji, flashing a little smile to her new friend. Aburame-san. Sasuke realized that Shikamaru was simply criticizing his friends, and that Shino was the only one who wasn't a loser. That guy did not irritate me. Prior to Shikamaru calling out the next individual he was thinking of, something tapped him on the shoulder. He turned to look into Ino's light blue eyes. She grinned and said, pick Naruto, he's my new friend. Shikamaru just shrugged, not giving a damn. Naruto, you're on my team. Naruto leapt up to stand next to his newest friend, beaming with surprise that he wasn't chosen last like he always was. Happy to be on the same team, the two blondes smiled at one another. A small chuckle sounded abruptly, and everyone turned to see Sasuke grinning and looking extremely arrogant. Wondering why he was even bothering Sasuke, Shikamaru said, something funny Sasuke. No, just that you happened to pick the loser of the class. Blondie doesn't know anything about being a ninja. No one's ever trained with him. Sasuke laughed as he replied. With his sharp tongue, Shikamaru shot back, well, isn't that what we're all at the academy for? To be taught how to be ninjas. With a smug expression on his face, Sasuke attempted to think of a strong rejoinder but gave up too soon. Now it would look ridiculous if he responded. Whatever, you there, you're on my team. Shikamaru grinned and turned to face his teammates, noticing the pride in his closest friend's eyes. He noticed that Naruto had a grateful expression in his eyes when he turned to face him, and he couldn't help but feel like giving himself a pat on the back for making the initial effort. Alright. Hey Ino, there's only few people left, want me to pick Sakura? The thought of her former best friend made Ino freeze. She turned to look at her alone there, and when she saw her like that, she always got that familiar ache in her chest. Sakura had the responsibility to make apologies since she had decided to break up with her friend. Ino said, turning her head away so no one could see the tears welling up in her eyes, I'd rather you didn't, Shika. One blonde boy did notice, though, and he opted not to comment. I wonder what's up with Ino-chan. Fine. Hey guy with the mohawk, you're on my team. After a minute, there were just two individuals left, and Sasuke noticed that a headache was starting to form. He hoped Shikamaru chose the stalker with the pink hair. He wasn't sure if he could handle her right now. Girl with the... Shikamaru growled, and Sasuke looked like he was about to rip his hair out in annoyance. This was deliberate, that damn Nara. The... black hair, you're on my team. Sasuke froze and looked at his last teammate with eyes of pure despair, as if a cold chill had just blown over him. Shikamaru would pay a heavy price for this. The pink hair stalker said, Sasuke-kun, we're on the same team, isn't that wonderful? Now we can get to know each other better. With a cool tone, Sasuke quickly recovered from his shock and turned to face his teacher. I don't care. Leave me alone. The pinky went on as if he hadn't spoken, you're so cool Sasuke. I just love that about you. Sasuke stood pouting in front of Iruka, thinking, kill me now. Well, now that you're all in teams, we're going to play a game. It is based off what the majority of your assignments will be as a shinobi. I will hand the captains either a red or blue flag. The captains will choose an area to hide their flag and that will become their home base. The objective of the game is to capture the flag of the opposing team. First team to return the enemy's flag to their home base will win. You are allowed to guard your flag as you see fit. I'll give you guys 5 minutes to come up with a strategy, and once I blow this whistle the game begins. Understood? There was a chorus of, "Yes, Uruka, Sensei," in response. "Alright, off with you. Good luck." The two teams moved to different sides so they could hide from the enemy's sight behind the trees. When Shikamaru thought they were far enough away, he stopped his group and assumed the meditative pose for which he would later become well known. Naruto saw the captain simply sit down and asked, aloud and to no one in particular, "What's he doing?" The guy called Shoji answered as he gobbled up his chips, "Shikamaru is really smart, but when he really needs to think about something he'll sit down like that and think until he has whatever's on his mind figured out." As she ascended a tree, Ino bragged, "Yeah, we're sure to win with whatever strategy Shika comes up with." Naruto asked, "Whatcha doing, Ino-chan?" as he watched her clamber up the wooden trunk. Ino exclaimed with delight, "I'm on the lookout to see if I can see Sasuke's team. I can see them," and then gasped with indignation. "Those cheaters, they're burying their red flag." Still in his contemplative pose, Shikamaru asked, "Can you see where As she clambered up, Ino clambered back down. "Yeah, Sasuke-kun just made a mark on the bark so they can tell where it is." "Oh shoot." When Ino was on the ground, Naruto asked in alarm, "What happened?" "One of the guys on the other team was starting to climb up a tree and I didn't want to be caught so I got down." With a determined gleam in his eyes, Shikamaru stood up and said, "Smart move, Ino, and I have a plan. Listen closely." As everyone settled into their places, a random guy asked, "Hey Sasuke-san, do you think this will really work?" As he waited for the whistle to blow, Sasuke grinned, "Yeah, Shikamaru picked a bunch of dumb idiots and I doubt any of them will be able to come up with a decent plan. By burying the flag alone we've got an advantage over them." He was eager to exact revenge on Shikamaru for that embarrassing incident earlier. A whistle went off with a loud, clear sound, and a moment later, there were the sounds of several feet tapping rapidly. All across the training field, Sasuke's voice rang, "All right everyone, get into position." Shikamaru's soothing voice resounded, and everyone leapt off to fulfill their assigned roles. "Naruto, Ino, Kiba, you guys know what to do. Everyone else get ready, they'll be here soon." Uruka yelled, "Team Shikamaru wins," and applauded the winners. Sakura stomped to yell at Ino, her voice full of shrieks, "They cheated. Ino.pig, dog guy and Blondie here cheated. They were spying on us. That's how they knew where Sasuke-kun buried our flag." The dishonored platinum blonde turned to the extremely amused shinobi, saying, "Shut it, forehead." "Uruka. Sensei never said anything about spying on the other team, or did you, Sensei?" "Well, that is true and I must congratulate Team Shikamaru for a nice job done. You managed to spy on the opposing team without being caught. A wise team always tries to gather as much information as they can without getting caught before attacking an enemy." Sasuke, who was silently upset about losing to Shikamaru and the blonde wannabe ninja, interjected, saying, "Yeah, that point aside, the loser here had the flag in his pocket. That must have been cheating. You said to hide at an area that would be the home base." Shikamaru grinned as he came to stand next to the smiling pair of blondes and the feral-looking, brown-haired boy. "That's right, Uruka. Sensei said wherever the captain hides the flag will become home base. I hid it in Naruto's pocket because his blue shorts would camouflage our blue flag. Since I did that, Naruto became our home base. Once Ino handed Naruto your flag, we won because we brought the enemy flag onto our home base." Uruka had a sneaking suspicion that Shikamaru would make a fantastic shinobi in the future. In less than 3 minutes, he was able to formulate a strategy that adhered to the game's rules. He had watched as they made all of their plans, and Mizuki had been watching Sasuke's team. It had been sage advice for Ino to consider spying on the opposing team, and even shrewder to stay under the radar. The fact that Naruto could fight and make such quick, wise decisions on the fly surprised him the most, though. He outwitted every opponent he faced and covered Kiba and Ino as they made their way toward the flag. All things considered, these kids would make excellent shinobi in the future. Shikamaru is correct. They won fair and square. Remember, students, that one of the best things to learn is how to outsmart your opponent. You do this by gathering information, observing your surroundings, and being able to make quick second decisions. Now it's time for lunch, so head back inside the classroom and gather your lunches. You have 30 minutes before the next class begins. Once again, good job today, guys. Iruka waved as he disappeared from their view. The students bolted back toward the building as soon as the smoke cleared. They were starving. Naruto felt his stomach roil as he watched all the children go outside to eat on the assigned eating areas. Sometimes living alone by yourself was really awful. This morning, he hadn't even considered packing himself a lunch. Naruto sighed and turned to find a quiet place to pass the time before the next lesson began. Behind him, Shikamaru's drawl voice boomed, "Yo, Naruto, where you going?" Naruto turned around, rubbed the back of his head with his right hand, and started laughing sheepishly. "Well, I was going to take a nap until class started." Shikamaru narrowed his eyes at the laughing blonde, raising an eyebrow. "You forgot to bring lunch, didn't you?" Naruto nodded, head hanging in shame, sighing in defeat. "Well, I'll share some extra stuff I got from my mom," Shikamaru said, yawning, and headed toward a couple of tables. Startled, Naruto trailed behind, gazing at the young man as though he had developed two heads. Shikamaru, noticing the expression the blonde was giving him, let out a sigh, sank into a wooden chair, and pulled out his lunch. "Don't look at me like that. Here, eat up, I'm sure you're hungry, especially since you did all that running." Naruto sat down next to him, examining the food warily, not wanting to be impolite. Shikamaru had shown him the kindest treatment he had ever received that day. He first chose him for his squad and then stood up for him when Sasuke made offensive remarks. He was now giving him some of his lunch. When Ino offered to share her scrolls with him, he could understand that she was just being polite, but food was a sacred item, and not many people openly shared their food with strangers. Placing a rice ball and a dango stick in front of Naruto, Shikamaru moaned, "Ugh, troublesome blonde. Here, eat, it isn't poisoned or something." Naruto felt a tremendous wave of joy at Shikamaru's small gesture. He was just being so kind. He gave Shikamaru a bear hug and said, "Thank you so much, Shikamaru. I really appreciate this." When Naruto let him go, Shikamaru gasped for his last breath, "Can't breathe, air." Naruto laughed sheepishly, "Sorry Shikamaru, didn't mean to hug you so tight." Yeah, you got some crazy strength there, Naruto. Anyways, I'm hungry, so let's eat." As the two continued to eat their respective meals, a well-known trio suddenly materialized in front of them. Ino pouted as she took the chair next to Naruto, saying, "Shika-kun, Naruto-kun. You guys didn't wait for us." Taking the other two available seats, Choji and Kiba started eating their lunch. The two boys continued eating, and one of them mumbled, "Sorry." When Ino saw how much her mother had given her, she sighed and opened her lunchbox once more. Observing Naruto's meager lunch, Ino started to remove all the unnecessary items she wouldn't be eating. Pushing all the food in front of her new blonde friend, she exclaimed, "Here, Naruto, have this. My mom gave me way too much. I swear she thinks I eat a ton or something. I get that a shinobi has to have more calories, but the amount she gives me is ridiculous. I can't get fat." Naruto was once more taken aback to realize that Ino wasn't joking. Her lunchbox contained 2 large meals at the very least. Accepting the food, Naruto still looked quite hungry. Naruto grinned brightly at her and Shikamaru, saying, "Gee, thanks Ino. Chan, I didn't bring a lunch and Shikamaru shared with me what he had, so really thank you. You guys are the best." "No problem, Naruto-kun. You know what, you don't have to bring a lunch. I know my mom will always give me this much so you can share with me. It'll save me having to explain to my mom why I have so much food left over." Ino replied with a grin before consuming her meal. Naruto's problem is solved. All you need to do now is remember to bring your books, Shikamaru thought to himself while he kept eating. Then Ino burst out laughing, remembering that Naruto had also forgotten his books. However, Naruto gave Shikamaru a sheepish chuckle. Yeah. Making quick connections between two things. Shikamaru grinned and shook his head, unable to believe how problematic his new friend was turning out to be. Shikamaru laughed and looked away from the dark glare of the mentioned Inuzuka. "It seems you and Kiba are cut from the same yarn, Naruto." "What was that, Nara?" Kiba yelled after finishing his meal. "Oh, nothing, just saying that you and Naruto both forgot to bring your books today." "Hey, I was in a hurry, alright. Geez, a guy makes one mistake, everyone hounds him for it," Naruto complained. Kiba continued eating and said, "Yeah, I'm with Naruto on this one." The group of friends started laughing at the boys' similar pouting expressions until they heard a different voice. Well, if it isn't a bunch of losers sitting together. The group turned to face the young Uchiha who was standing calmly in front of them as the laughter suddenly stopped. Kiba snarled, "What you want, Sasuke?" Today, this guy really got under his skin. "Nothing, just walking back to class when I thought I'd stop and say hello." With joy, Ino said, "Hello Sasuke-kun." With a smug grin, Sasuke responded, blatantly ignoring the adoring blonde girl standing in front of him. Anyway, don't think you're so great, Shikamaru, just because you won today. I'll still be the number one." Naruto swiftly intervened when he noticed the hurt expression on his new friend's face at the black-haired boy's apparent rejection, saying, "Hey, it isn't nice to ignore someone when they're being nice to you. That's just being rude." Sasuke's grin widened at the shocked expression on the spiky blonde boy's face. "What do you know about manners? You don't have parents to teach you them." When Ino learned that her new friend was an orphan, she snapped out of her stunned state that had resulted from Sasuke's harsh remark. Everything made sense now. Why had he been in such a rush that he'd forgotten his lunch and his scrolls? Unlike her mother that morning, Naruto had no one to help him get ready for school and wake him up on time. Before long, the other diners at the table realized what she was thinking as well, and they turned to look at the spiky blonde in question with disbelieving eyes. Ino got to her feet, her face full of anger, and shoved the gullible Sasuke to the ground. With bittersweet tears, Ino erupted, "Don't say such hurtful things to my friend. Naruto-kun is much nicer than you. Because of this guy, she lost her best friend." Upon witnessing the extent of the boy's damage, Shikamaru growled, "I think it's best you leave Uchiha." Choji, Kiba, and Shikamaru got up from their seats and walked over to Sasuke, ready to give the boy a beating if he persisted. Sasuke got up and walked away from the angry three, his nose raised and his head held high. Whatever. When he was out of sight, the three boys turned to see the platinum blonde sobbing uncontrollably and their new blonde friend fighting back tears. The two were tightly hugging one another. When the three boys saw this, they came over to the upset blondes and gave them a group hug. Amidst his struggle, Naruto became aware that he had reached his first objective for the day. To locate dependable, obedient friends he would want to spend the rest of his life with. After everyone had collected themselves and gone back to their seats, the friends just sat there, staring at their lunches. Their hunger gradually returning. They went back to eating one by one in a calm, cozy silence. Too much on their minds for them to be truly interested in striking up a conversation. After a while, Naruto's positive attitude won out and he couldn't stop picturing Ino shoving Sasuke until a tiny smile spread across his facial hair. He laughed and said, "Did you guys see the look on Sasuke's face whenever Ino-chan pushed him down? He looked so dumb." The group, which included one girl and four boys, regarded the golden-haired boy with a chuckle as a unique sight. They couldn't believe he was so happy considering how Sasuke had treated him. Kiba couldn't resist joining in on the joke, growing even more fond of the boy. Optimistic people always appealed to him. "Yeah, he was so surprised. You're really strong, Ino, to have taken down that stuck-up jerk." The aforementioned girl blushed slightly at their compliments before joining in on their laughter. Before long, everyone was chuckling. Before they knew it, they had resumed their jesting, and the unpleasant incident had quickly faded from their memories. The girls were smoldering them with intense glares as soon as they entered the classroom, and the group sensed something akin to murderous intent. They all went back to their seats, ignoring them, and Naruto noticed that they were seated next to each other. Ino was seated next to Shikamaru, with Choji, Kiba's neighbor, seated in front of him. When he realized this, a smile came to his face. He enjoyed being so close to his new best friends. One by one, as they took their seats, they all started to frown in the same way, with the exception of Naruto, who appeared perplexed at their facial expressions. "Hey, what's the matter, guys?" Ino screamed as she looked everywhere around her desk. "Someone took my stuff. I can't find my backpack." Shikamaru and Choji agreed, saying, "Yeah, same here." Later, when he discovered he had made an enemy on the first day of school, the latter moaned, "How annoying." Kiba continued, trying to find his belongings. "My stuff's gone too." Following a few deft sniffs, Kiba narrowed his eyes menacingly at a girl with pink hair who was sitting a few rows in front of them and was clearly trying to look unaware. To keep the girl who was foolish enough to steal their belongings from knowing, Kiba softly spoke to them, whispering, "Guys, that girl Sakura took our stuff. I can smell them in that cabinet next to her row. Her scent's all over them. And Inuzuka's nose is not easily fooled." As Ino glared at the girl who was beginning to become the bane of her existence, she could feel a headache developing. They were such close friends once. She used to act like such a jerk, and I used to know her so well. Since Sakura knew they wouldn't want to make a scene and tell the teacher, she took their belongings. Shikamaru noticed a sparkle in Ino's eyes as he said this out loud. Okay guys. Pay close attention to what we're going to do to get some payback, Shikamaru murmured in a conspiratorial manner to the others. The smiles on their faces got bigger by the minute as they listened to him. They were going to accomplish two goals at once. Iruka walked over to his desk and gave an order. Students, settle down and open your book titled Chakra. We're about to go over a very important concept that comes with using ninjutsu. Ino held up her hand, seeing her chance to start the plan. Ino said angrily, Iruka. Sensei. I don't have any of my books. Someone took my backpack and I can't find it. Along with Choji and Kiba, Shikamaru continued, my stuff's gone too. Iruka noticed a pattern and gave the students in front of him a mild irritated look. But Ino cut him off before he could say anything. It seemed that she had the same idea as he had. I think Sasuke did it. He's probably still upset that we beat him in the game earlier. There was a gasp of indignation from the accused and his supporters. I wouldn't stoop so low to something so childish. If I did I would have taken the loser's stuff too. Sasuke responded. Well, Ino has a point, Sasuke. Everyone whose stuff was taken was from Shikamaru's team. It may not have been you, but someone from your team did. As captain of the team, you are the leader and squad leaders will always shoulder the blame for their teammates' actions. As such, Sasuke, you will be punished unless the guilty party confesses. Iruka replied in a firm tone. Sakura had been watching Naruto and the others while Iruka chastised Sasuke. Her horrified expression when she realized her crush was in trouble was priceless. Everyone knew she was going to give in and admit it. The girl with pink hair got up and, seemingly at the exact moment, began to cry. Sensei, don't punish Sasuke. I did it. I hid their stuff in the cabinet. I'm sorry I didn't. Sasuke would get in trouble. As the 6-year-old girl who was named Cherry Blossom admitted to the act, there were gasps coming from all over the room. As 5 identical smiles spread across the victims' faces. Iruka sighed as he retrieved the bags from the cabinet and returned them to their rightful owners. I am very disappointed in you, Sakura. As punishment you will remain after class and clean the board after you have written 100 sentences telling how wrong your actions were today. Now class, open your books. With the exception of one Kunoichi in training who was to stay later, the students were dismissed from their first day of classes when the last bell rang. For the next 6 years of their lives, today had signaled the beginning of a routine. As he and Ino, Choji, and Shikamaru left the school building, Naruto exclaimed, Wow, Shikamaru, I can't believe how great your plan worked. I feel kinda bad for Sakura though. I would hate to have to clean a chalkboard. Ino said, pumping her tiny fist into the air, serves her right for being such a meanie. I'm glad Sasuke was put on the spot too though. That good-looking jerk deserved it just as much as forehead. Shikamaru let out a long sigh and shook his head at their antics. He and Choji silently bid farewell, realizing their fathers were waiting for them at the door. Seeing that her father was with theirs, Ino also bid them a cheerful farewell, hurrying after Shikamaru and Choji as they made their way to their parents. When Naruto noticed how warmly his new friend's parents welcomed them and accompanied them on their walk to their separate houses, he stopped in his tracks. Naruto was leaving the academy with a dejected expression on his face when he was approached by a certain young Uchiha who had a sly smile on his face. When Naruto started to move again, Sasuke walked beside him and grinned, saying, Hey there, loser. What do you want, Sasuke? Nothing, just saying hello. With a raised eyebrow, Naruto asked, You really like saying hello or something? As the boys got closer to the edge of the academy's large yard, Sasuke's smirk turned into a frown, annoyed by the innocence in his question. Sasuke replied with a smile back, Not really, but I have to go now, my father is waiting for me. With a half-hearted backwards wave, he left. But before he could move a step away from the agitated blonde, a tall, silver-haired shinobi passed him, hands in his pockets. Sasuke became intrigued by the man and froze, observing him walk up to the academy gates and appear to be waiting for someone. The one-eyed man waved to a boy with blonde hair, then suddenly yelled, Naruto. Hurry up, I'm starving. Naruto heard his name and looked up to see his new friend Kakashi calling him. His previous attitude vanished. He grinned broadly and dashed in the direction of the man. Shrugging his shoulders and scratching the back of his head, Naruto exclaimed, Hey Kakashi. I almost forgot you were waiting for me. With a chuckle, Kakashi took the boy in his arms and carried him on his shoulders, just like his sensei had done for him years ago. The young child, who had never before had someone put him on their shoulders, was astounded by his actions. With a confused and bewildered expression on his face, Sasuke observed the conversation between the two. How in the world did the loser know such a guy? Was that Kakashi? The small Uchiha was preoccupied and didn't notice when the two people he was watching stopped and turned to stare at him. A loud, bothersome voice said, "Bye, Sasuke," as it suddenly penetrated his curious mind. Looking up, all the small Uchiha could do was stare as the odd couple walked away slowly, all the while having to bite back his urge to hurl something towards the blonde who had that stupid grin on her face. That man was obviously a shinobi, and Sasuke resolved to find out who he was as he resumed his walk home. Naruto had no family, much less shinobi relatives, based on what he'd heard from his father. Naruto slurped his meal and said, "Thanks again for this, Kakashi. I love ramen." At that point, Kakashi was feeling a little grateful for his high-paying job because he wasn't sure he would be able to afford how expensive ramen was at Naruto. "Sure thing, Naruto. Say, are you friends with that Uchiha boy?" Once he had finished his noodles, Naruto raised an eyebrow at the shinobi with one eye and scowled every time Sasuke was mentioned. As he picked at his food, the blonde murmured, "Well, I don't think I'm his friend." Given the abrupt shift in attitude, Kakashi reasoned that Itachi's younger brother must have experienced something today. "I see, so something happened, right?" Kakashi asked after observing the boy shake his head in agreement. "Do you want to tell me about it?" Naruto sighed and started to go into great detail about his first day of the Ninja Academy. He went on to talk about how Ino-chan was his first buddy. Everything, including what Sasuke had told him as they were leaving the academy, he told his new friend Kakashi. The silver-haired shinobi frowned, unhappy with what was happening. If he had anything to say about it, nobody was going to make fun of his sensei's son. "It seems like Sasuke sees in you a rival, Naruto." "Rival? I hadn't done anything to him though." "Well, all those kids in your class who you became friends with today have been together or have been leased around each other since they are all from famous shinobi clans. I'm pretty sure that the reason Sasuke picked on you was because he wanted to prove he was better. The Uchihas aren't very well known for having a friendly disposition. I wouldn't worry too much about it though, Naruto. I'm sure he'll eventually come around." Kakashi replied with a grin on his face. Before starting to eat again, the blonde muttered, "I guess." The young boy was clearly disliked by the Jonin as they sat there in contented silence. Even inside the tiny eatery, he could feel the vile looks that passers-by would give Naruto when they saw him eating. He felt that he had been absent for far too long. He had actually been sent on a year-long mission by the Hokage, and he had just returned a few weeks ago. He could not think of a way to talk to the boy that would not make him look like some eerie stranger. To his surprise, he didn't think it would go as planned. As a result, he had been hoping to run into the boy at some point. Whether Kakashi had intended to stand in front of the academy gates that day or not, the young child had actually run into him. After completing their meal and exchanging a substantial amount of cash, Kakashi and Naruto made the decision to take a stroll. Kakashi, drawing the attention of his younger counterpart, said with a wistful sigh, "You know, Naruto, you remind me of someone I knew a long time ago." Naruto asked, tilting his head, "I do? Yeah, he was just like you. Always full of energy and in a bright, cheerful mood." "Oh, is he your friend?" Kakashi nodded slowly, a dejected, faraway look in his eye. "Yes, he was my friend. I wouldn't be here today if it hadn't been for him." Captivated by his story, Naruto inquired, "What's his name?" Kakashi laughed a little at the recollections of his childhood. Believe it or not, he was a Uchiha. Obito Uchiha. The complete opposite of Sasuke Uchiha and well, almost every Uchiha. "Really?" Naruto asked, shocked that someone such as that could be connected to the stick.in.the.mud Sasuke. "Yes, you could say he was the black sheep of the family. When I was a few years older than you, Obito and I would constantly fight much like you and Sasuke do." "Huh, I wanna meet this Obito. He sounds like my kinda person." Kakashi admitted, nostalgically, "Oh, I have no doubt about that, but sadly I can't introduce you guys. You see, Naruto, Obito died saving my life a long time ago." Naruto looked away from the tall man, sensing the morbid mood that had settled over them, and saw that they had ended up passing a sizable stone memorial. He could see several names engraved on it when he looked up at it. He was particularly drawn to one name. It was instantly apparent to him that this was the name his new friend had been referring to. Don't be sad. Old man Hokage told me once that we should be grateful for the sacrifices others make for us. We should live happy because they wouldn't want us to be sad. That's why I want to be great ninja just like the fourth Hokage. He died so that everyone in the village could live and be happy. Naruto turned his intense blue eyes toward the sorrowful man who appeared shocked at his words. Every time I feel sad, I remember what he did for me and the whole village, and smile because that's what he would have wanted, right? Naruto said. How a little child could possess such wisdom well beyond his years amazed Kakashi. Then the images of the resentful villagers flashed before his eyes, and he realized that his sensei's son had likely been forced to mature much faster than he ever needed to in some aspects by such treatment. To him, it was ironic that the only person who really knew what the Yondaime wanted for this village was the hated boy, for them to flourish and enjoy many more years of happiness. In fact, Minato's greatest legacy is Naruto, whom he left behind when he passed away. He was filled with anger upon realizing that, had Minato survived, everyone would have loved and cherished this intelligent boy, in stark contrast to how they currently treat him. He occasionally found it hard to believe how foolish people could be. The spitting image of their beloved fourth Hokage could be seen if they removed the hate-filled veil from their eyes. Naruto had his father's golden hair, intense blue eyes, and unwavering resolve down to the letter. Not to mention the other traits his mother gave him. She belonged to the Uzumaki clan, which was renowned for its endurance and sealing prowess. She was a fierce, strong lady. It was really unfortunate that such a strong clan had been completely destroyed and that the lone surviving heir also happened to be the only known or unidentified living Namikaze heir. Though their fame may not be as great as that of the Uzumaki family, the Namikaze clan still produced some extremely talented shinobi. Releasing his melancholic thoughts, Kakashi grinned at the young child. You're very right, Naruto. The Yondaime and Obito would have wanted us to live happy lives. Naruto smiled brightly back at him, glad that the earlier gloom had lifted. So big brother, Kakashi, want to keep walking? Kakashi nodded to the boy and they strolled back into the village. Big brother, never thought the kid would ever call me that. It seems that at least one of Sensei's wishes came true. Kakashi pondered. Kakashi led them through the area outside of which most clan compounds were located. Naruto identified one in particular as the one he used to walk past when he was younger. Naruto asked, pointing to a familiar balloon figure that had always baffled him, "Hey big brother, what's that symbol mean up on top of that gate?" "Oh that? It represents the Uchiha clan. It's their family crest." Naruto exclaimed, "They sure do have a really big family, don't they?" Upon seeing the large number of people wandering around the compound, Kakashi laughed and had to admit that she was right. The Uchiha clan was extremely powerful and numerous. "Yeah, they sure do." Naruto, who now considered the man to be a brother, turned his blue gaze towards him upon hearing his melancholic sigh. "Do you have a big family too?" His innocent question frozen Kakashi in shock, and his treacherous memory flashed back to the last moments he shared with his father before becoming the last Hitaki. "Hey, are you okay?" The boy's worried tone forced the silver-haired shinobi to wake up from his nightmares. Kakashi, trying to hide his sadness, said with a light laugh and smile, yeah, sorry, spaced out a bit. But no, I don't have a family. I'm actually like you. I'm all by myself." "Really? Well then how about we become a family? You can be the big brother and I'll be the little brother. It might be a small family, but someday it'll be as big as the Uchihas." Naruto giggled as he explained his idea. His youth was evident in the straightforward way he solved their issue. Kakashi was almost tempted to concur with the boy, but he was aware that if he was seen with Naruto too frequently, rumors about the boy's origins would spread, not to mention all the animosity he had toward many people. Kakashi sternly remarked as he knelt down to be eye level with the boy with the golden hair. "Well, that would definitely solve the problem, but it wouldn't be very safe for you if we just do that. You see, little one, I have a lot enemies, and if they find out I have someone that they could use against me, it would leave you in serious danger." "Oh, I see," Naruto said, his head hunched over in regret. Kakashi suppressed a sigh upon witnessing the boy's apparent distress. How was he going to make him feel better now? But before he could respond, the blue-eyed marvel stunned him with his next statement. "Well then I have to get stronger, so that I won't be in danger and we can be a family that everyone will be afraid of. Believe it." With wide eyes and a stunned expression, Kakashi simply gazed at the impressive stance the young child was striking. Just as he was about to dismiss the thought, it occurred to him that it might actually spur him on to more intense training. Having a little drive wouldn't hurt. Alright Naruto, I'll make a promise with you. When you are older and a fearsome shinobi, I vow that you and I will restore a clan name that was thought to have died and make it feared by all the shinobi nations once again. How does that sound? He smiled as he looked at the determined youngster. Naruto embraced the silver-haired man and said, "Yeah, it's a promise Kakashi, and I never break a promise because that's my ninja way. Believe it," with a fierce passion and conviction. And Naruto was one big step closer to realizing his greatest dream, aside from becoming Hokage. With this vow, being a family man. Naruto started talking about all the weird new things that had happened to him in just one day after Kakashi had left him at his apartment. Initially, he made 4 new friends instead of just 1. Kiba, Ino, Choji, and Shikamaru were the best friends a person could ask for. Even though Ino could be very demanding at times, they were all devoted to one another, so it wasn't something he couldn't manage. But Kakashi, his new brother, was the true source of happiness in his otherwise dismal existence. The other day he'd called him older brother, and he'd taken to calling him cutesy names, and he hadn't minded. But he did recall the warning Kakashi had given him when he dropped him off at his house after their walk. "Remember, Naruto, that despite all the difficulties we may encounter, nobody can discover that you and I are close friends. I ask that you present our relationship as casual as possible, since that Uchiha boy will undoubtedly ask you about it." When Sasuke approached him the following school day and inquired about Kakashi, just as expected, Naruto felt as though he was on a mission to defend his new brother. "Hey, prick. How could a nobody like you know someone as well? Known as Kakashi Hatake?" Sasuke said, his words tinged with scorn. Sasuke had pestered his elder brother about the man he saw with Naruto ever since he got home yesterday. That such a formidable shinobi was even familiar with the blonde menace was a cruel shock. "I was late for class yesterday because I met with Sasuke when we ran into each other, not because I was inconsiderate of your busy schedule. He offered to take me out for ramen after school as an apology for making me late for class. That's all there is to it. I'm not that familiar with him." Naruto shrugged and explained, trying to look as if he had no idea. "Dims. Unless it was absolutely necessary, that guy wouldn't want to hang out with losers like you." With a sly smile, Sasuke responded and turned back to his seat. Naruto had to force himself not to grit his teeth in anger at the way the boy with the dark hair had made fun of him, if he were aware of the reality. From the door between the two boys, Ino had observed the scene and waited for Sasuke to go before taking a seat next to Naruto. "Hey, what was the Uchiha talking to you about, Whiskers?" "Whiskers?" Naruto threw back his head slightly and echoed in confusion. "Don't you think it fits you? Those are the marks on your face, yes. It gives you a fox-like appearance." Ino laughs in response. Naruto turned his head away from her and gave a silent nod, blushing at the nickname. Luckily, Iruka entered the room at that precise moment to save him from a humiliating scenario and silence the students before he began his lecture. Naruto wondered all day long when he would be able to hang out with Kakashi once more. The man was entertaining, despite his strange demeanor. Aside from that, he was the first person he had ever met who had accepted him voluntarily. Nevertheless, the golden hair boy couldn't help but feel like he had been forgotten as the days went by and Naruto saw nothing of his new older brother, not even hair. "No, Kakashi would not overlook my existence. He promised me he wouldn't break it." Naruto had also made a pledge, so he was determined to study and train diligently going forward. His dream was close at hand, and his own shortcomings would not prevent him from achieving it. He hadn't seen his older brother for precisely a week. Naruto felt something hit him in the back of the head as he was leaving the academy after his classes for the day came to an end. "Sorry, what was that?" While massaging his battered head, Naruto muttered. He turned around and grinned broadly when he saw a familiar tall, silver-haired shinobi standing idly in front of him. "Kakashi, where have you been?" The boy bounded over to him, exclaiming happily. "Oh, you know, getting lost on the path of life." Naruto threw his head to one side in confusion, and Kakashi saw him and laughed heartily at the confused look on his face. "Never mind. I was on a mission. I only returned yesterday." The silver-haired shinobi shrugged carelessly and answered honestly. "Whoa. What sort of mission is it?" Asking with stars in his eyes was Naruto. "Sorry, Gaki can't reveal mission information." Naruto pouted, crossing his arms, and swiveling his body to indicate that he was not happy with the response. With a sigh, Kakashi realized that since the boy hadn't been seen in a while, he should probably treat him to some ramen. "Say Naruto, how would you like to go eat ramen at Urchiraku's?" The shinobi grinned and invited. Naruto, with his wide eyes and drooling slightly from the thought of the heavenly food, grabbed hold of the older man's hand and pulled him along the street towards the one place he cherished above all else. The 6-year-old was carried behind the small torpedo of golden, blonde hair, seemingly like a paper bag, and Kakashi had to hold back his laughter at his sudden strength. "All right, eat ramen, I'm here to come." After a year. To the majority of Konoha's residents, the evening was relatively calm, but for two of them, it was a very trying one. "You should attempt to use less chakra, Naruto. Gaki, you're overdoing it." A certain irritated blonde received a reprimand from Kakashi. Naruto took another breath to calm his overactive nerves and, for what seemed like the 100th time, he mimicked the hand signals for the Bushin no Jutsu that he had learned in the academy nearly 3 months prior. Sadly, Naruto was not among those who quickly noticed, but everyone else was. It had been Kakashi's habit for a while now to visit the apartment in the evenings and assist Naruto with his coursework at the academy. To his astonishment, his self-proclaimed younger brother was incapable of performing even the most basic jutsu. The Hitaki prioritized ensuring Naruto performed well in the academy because he could not allow the only son of his great sensei to be incapable of performing such basic jutsus. This was the only sensible thing to do. "All right, I'm trying, but I'm running out of ways to bring it down. As low as it gets is this." As he attempted to follow Kakashi's advice, Naruto moaned. Glancing through his silver hair that defies gravity, Kakashi thought of a way to solve this. He recalled from his time in the academy that you had to be able to make an ideal clone in order to pass the academy genin test. Naruto wouldn't be able to pass even though he had some time left before graduating if he couldn't make a clone by then. Kakashi soon discovered a way around the system. It was never specified that the clone Naruto had to be a straightforward Bushin clone. Naruto would be the ideal candidate for the Kage Bushin no Jutsu because, as a result of the Kyuubi and his mother's family, he possessed such large reserves of chakra. But it was against the rules. Who cares about rules, really? It's your excess chakra that's the issue. Regular clone jutsu requires very little chakra, but your clones are essentially being overcooked if you can't get it down to that of a regular genin. There is a method you can practice called Kage Bushin no Jutsu, but it requires a lot more chakra to develop. For this reason, neither academy students nor regular shinobi in general are taught it. "Now pay attention while I teach it to you." Kakashi gave an order while displaying the appropriate hand signals. "Brother, I think I got it. Therefore, it requires more chakra?" "Yup, so put more than you were doing earlier, but don't overdo it." With a nod and imitation of the hand gestures that Kakashi had made moments earlier, 3 identical Narutos materialized in front of an astonished man with silver hair. "All right. I succeeded, it's true, believe it." Kakashi laughed at the fervently jumping and fist-pumping Naruto as he proceeded to stand in front of the doppelgangers and assess them. He then turned to congratulate a much more composed boy with golden hair who had, surprisingly, been waiting patiently for the verdict. "Well done. You succeeded on your first attempt. That's pretty amazing, little brother." With a grin that included a ruffle of his spiky blonde hair, he said. Naruto couldn't help but smile at the compliments and feel a surge of pride in his chest. Shadow clones come with some really interesting concepts. These are unquestionably clones. They are resilient to a few blows, but a powerful blow will cause them to dissipate. All information and experience that your clones acquire, though, is passed on to you. This will work well as a training method since you can add the equivalent for each clone created if you train with multiple clones for an hour. Naruto's big eyes widened at the thought of spending an hour training with 3 clones, for a total of 3 hours. With this, the possibilities are really endless. However, I don't want you to handle 10 clones at once. If you overdo it, there can be some very serious psychological effects. You also run the risk of creating too many clones and experiencing chakra exhaustion because your chakra will be split equally between each one. When Kakashi noticed a particular shine in the young boy's blue eyes, he continued. However, they won't be of much assistance when it comes to physical training. That will have to wait for another day. You need to condition yourself. You deserve to relax. We've done enough for today. Ah, come on. To the amusement of a tall shinobi, 3 identical voices whined. Naruto yawned, nodding in comprehension as he sent his clones flying. Apparently, it was time for bed. "It's time to go to bed. I have a mission tomorrow morning, and you have a school brat." As he turned to walk out the front door, Kakashi told the young boy. "Hold on. How come, on my birthday, you said you would be here, 3 days away?" With his head only reaching the top of Kakashi's thigh, Naruto wailed as he latched onto the man's pant leg. With a sigh, Kakashi acknowledged that he had made a promise to his younger brother, but he couldn't just decide what to do because it was a mission. Well, I wasn't prepared for a mission, but I must complete it. I apologize, younger brother. I promise to make it up to you when I return, okay? The boy started sniffling, and the Hitaki squatted down so that they were eye level with Naruto, startling him with his shakes. Touching his tiny shoulders, Kakashi was horrified by the terror he saw in those dark blue eyes. What is the issue, Naruto? Whenever I go on a mission, you never get like this. Why are you acting so scared? Kakashi whispered to him. Naruto felt his heart tighten at the worry in his voice as flashes of his past birthdays raced through his mind. With Kakashi at his side now, he had hoped that this year would be unlike any other. This year was supposed to be different. I believed that with you by my side, no one could harm me, but if you leave, they will return. His voice cracked with desperation. Kakashi flinched at the sound. Kakashi, frozen in shock and rage, realized at last what the boy had been afraid of. When his birthday rolled around, he was afraid of being left alone because he had grown accustomed to the idea that inebriated or resentful individuals would try to hurt him. Kakashi vividly recalled the occasions on which he had to lock the door to the apartment and call for his dogs in order to shield the young child from the animosity and rage that surfaced during this seasonal period. Tightly clutching the boy to his chest, Kakashi attempted to calm and console him as he searched for an answer. It was impossible for him to simply give up on the task that the Hokage had personally given to him. It was an easy carrier mission, but he would be traveling to the hidden village of Suna to deliver a peace treaty, which would take several days. He was required to ensure that the treaty was approved by the Kazekage of Suna, even though those kinds of matters were primarily political in nature. He was having trouble with the timing, damn it. The only thing he could think of was to take Naruto with him, but even with a small chance of attack, there was still a chance. If everything else failed, Naruto could hold his own until he could get him out of danger, and he could protect him. Kakashi let go of the much calmer boy and met his gaze directly, exhaling heavily. Alright Naruto, this what we'll do. I hope I'm not killed by the Hokage. Being Naruto Uzumaki that day was fantastic. He was going to spend his birthday with his favorite person, who lived far away from Konoha, after being allowed to miss a few days of school. Sure, things couldn't get any better. While a rather agitated silver-haired shinobi ran alongside Naruto, who was having a good time. But Kakashi was unable to make the same claim. Naruto had learned when to bother Kakashi and when not to, at the absolute least. The young, hyperactive boy who was blonde was dying to ask his older brother where they were going, but he refrained. This morning, his brother wasn't the friendliest person. After his early morning conversation with the Hokage yesterday, during which he was threatened and had his ear chewed off, Kakashi was still feeling grumpy. The Hokage clearly didn't want Naruto to leave the village walls, but Kakashi wasn't going to abandon him when his life was still in danger. After a while, the Sandaime agreed to let Naruto go with him to Suna, but only under specific restrictions. After spending a whole day on the road, they were now only a few hours away, and Kakashi couldn't help but feel more anxious as they got closer. A peace treaty needed to be signed because there were bad relations between the two shinobi villages at the moment, but Kakashi suspected the Kazekage wouldn't sign it. That man was seriously lacking in power. Kakashi had heard some terrible rumors about him, and if any of them were true, he didn't want the man to be anywhere close to Naruto. The most horrific rumor claimed that he had truly fused a tailed beast in his fetus, causing his wife to die during childbirth. He had done it in the hopes of obtaining an unbreakable weapon that would allow him to dominate the other shinobi nations. Kakashi felt a bad taste in his mouth, just thinking about what kind of man that would do if he found out that Konoha's own Jinchuriki was in his village. Kakashi stopped Naruto and grabbed something from his back pouch, shaking his head away from his troubling thoughts. Naruto, put this on right here. We are getting close to the boundaries of Suna village, and one of the requirements for the Hokage to allow you to enter was that you keep your identity a secret. Yes, indeed, I get it, big brother, but I'm going to look like a copycat from now on. With a pout, Naruto put on the same black mask that the silver-haired man, who was always amused by, wore. Funny you should say that. Thinking back on the moniker he had earned himself over the past few years, Kakashi murmured out loud before passing along a dark navy blue cloak with a white swirl on the back. Why is the cloak there? Must I also wear this? Yes, keep your hood on as long as you're in public, alright. With a hearty yes, Naruto raised the black hood over his head to hide his most distinctive features from prying eyes. The two men continued on their way, approaching the border into Suna's desert regions, without saying anything more. Naruto gaped like a fish out of water when he saw, to his amazement, a sea of golden sand that was rolling over the hot earth in the shape of waves. The heat seemed to be increasing while he stood there, making him wish he wasn't compelled to wear such a heavy cloak. Okay, Naruto, I'm going to teach you how to channel chakra through your body to keep your temperature cool because I know it must be getting pretty warm for you. Naruto nodded appreciatively and turned to observe how Kakashi's white chakra appeared to surround him like a shield. Just let your chakra flow through your body, but keep it close to you or else it won't work. After a few attempts at following the directions exactly, Naruto was soon covered in a layer of blue chakra, which significantly reduced his body's temperature to a much more comfortable level. It was finally paying off that Kakashi had made him perform those daily exercises for chakra control, despite their extreme stupidity. Good job, now I want you to add a bit more chakra to your feet to keep you from sinking into the sand. Kakashi went on to give an example. Chakra was easier to apply to his feet, and soon Naruto was hovering just above the Golden Sea. Kakashi led the way into the endless desert after he was certain they were prepared to face Suna's harsh conditions. An easy trip into this would have turned dangerous if you weren't able to sense chakra signatures. Soon, the towering arid cliffs of Sanakagura were visible. Naruto was excited to be able to travel to a place like this. The true challenge of this mission, though, was passing through the village gate undetected. Kakashi hoped that the two Suna shinobi manning the entrance wouldn't question him about Naruto. Naruto was still very young, but Genin often accompanied Jonin on missions. Cease. You're a Konoha-based shinobi? As he made Kakashi and Naruto stop in front of the gate, one of the guards inquired. Yes, I bring a personal message for the Kazekage. Kakashi responded in a casual manner, but he never let down his guard. We were informed that only one shinobi would come, but there's two of you. The other shinobi narrowed his dark eyes at the two and spoke. Yes, this is my first-year student. At the last moment, he wanted to come with me. I'm hoping there's not an issue. The guards exchanged glances and eventually decided that the young boy posed no threat, allowing them to pass. However, not before informing them that they would be monitoring them. When they were a few yards away, Kakashi sighed deeply in relief. Brother, please relax. This location is really awesome. Can I go have a look around? With wide eyes, Naruto questioned in excitement as he studied the odd clay-shaped buildings. The Hitaki considered the request, unable to come up with a valid reason to refuse him. In addition, he had a direct conversation with the Kazekage. In addition, he wanted the Kazekage to be unaware of Naruto's existence. And he is quite loud. Okay, but make sure you stay out of trouble. This is where we should meet at sunset. I have to meet with the Kazekage after I get us a hotel room. Responding, Kakashi gave Naruto some cash in case the blonde needed it. Big brother, don't worry, I'll be good. It's true, believe it. Naruto gave a thumbs up in response. Kakashi bid a fond farewell, ruffling his hair, before vanishing in a cloud of smoke and gust of leaves. Naruto explored the foreign city of Sanakagura while his deep blue eyes were full of wonder. The young blonde was taken aback by the area's scarcity of both water and plant life, as he had grown up in a region known for both. How can people live in a place like this, I wonder? I was unable to complete it. I would never want to give up swimming and jumping around in the trees. As he walked slowly through the dusty streets, Naruto pondered. He noticed an intriguing sight while the sun was still quite high in the desert sky. He had stopped in what looked like a play area or playground. There were lots of kids running around and one specific group of boys who were playing football. Although Naruto had never played the game himself, he had seen children playing it when he was younger in Konoha. But they never invited him to participate. Pushing those depressing memories from his mind, Naruto went back to watching the children when he saw a small red-haired boy sitting a few yards away by himself. The boy looked to be a year or two younger than Naruto. Much like him, the boy was observing the others as they played with the ball, but what truly startled Naruto was the dejected expression in the young redhead's teal eyes. Naruto could not quite put his finger on it, but there was something achingly familiar about the boy's expression. He heard sounds of disappointment from the group of boys he had been watching earlier, and he was about to approach the boy, assuming he was just lonely. One of the nearby rock pillars had been kicked over while they were playing with the ball. A massive column of sand emerged from the ground and lifted the ball just as Naruto was about to leap up to retrieve it. The ball was returned to the red-headed boy's hands by the sand. That's a really incredible jutsu. With astonishment, Naruto froze in place. Reaching up, the boy took it and held it tentatively in his small hands. Naruto observed the boys who had become motionless and silent as the little redhead approached them. The young blonde was astounded by the terrified expressions on their faces. The redhead had apparently stopped approaching because it seemed to have the same effect on him. When Naruto saw the scene play out in front of him, something just tore at his heart. It's not possible. They handle him the same way they handled me in Konoha. The next few words drowned Naruto in his own recollections. What is it that you want? Get out of here. A boy with brown hair began to withdraw with the others, whimpering. I just want to give this back to you. With a gentle reply, the boy with the red hair moved forward and extended himself towards the other boys. Not at all. Keep out. Monstrosity. A group of boys ran back into the village center, screeching as they went. The redhead begged the children to come back in what only Naruto could interpret as a last-ditch attempt. It appears that he attempted to stop them with his sand, but that served to terrify them even more. Naruto went up to the now silent and trembling red-haired boy before things got any worse. There were now just the two of them left in the playground after the boy's futile attempts to persuade the other children to leave. That's a really cool jutsu you got there, pal. In order to get his attention, Naruto spoke to him. The red-headed boy turned and was shocked to see a boy about his age standing nonchalantly behind him, his hands intertwined behind his skull. The Suna boy inspected the child who spoke to him, uncomfortable with the newcomer. His height was approximately 2 inches greater than his own, and he had on a black mask that covered up all of his facial features save for his vivid blue eyes. He was also shielding his eyes from the other boy's hair with his hood on. There was no Suna to this boy. Why you find it amusing? You're not afraid of it? He turned completely around and faced the unfamiliar, red-haired boy, but he spoke hesitantly. Perhaps he would be different if he weren't from Suna. Yes, without a doubt. That was fantastic. Why should a jutsu scare me? Nobody was being harmed by you. It's true, believe it. With a laugh and a thumbs up, Naruto replied. This Suna kid was truly remarkable. The red-haired boy's expression of wonder and amazement towards Naruto was unlike anything he had ever seen. He felt somewhat important as a result. I wonder what I said? You aren't afraid of me? Using his right hand to clutch his arm, the other boy finally whispered. No, sorry. Would you like to see something really amazing? Upon noticing the redhead nod, Naruto made 2 of his signature hand gestures, and in a cloud of white smoke, 3 Narutos materialized in front of the startled red-haired boy. There's 3 of you. It is known as the Kage Bushin no Jutsu. Yes, it's what my older brother taught me. I'm Naruto, though. What's your name? The blonde asked, deliberately omitting his last name as Kakashi had requested earlier in their trek to Suna. Gaara. Are you from elsewhere in the area? No, I'm not. My hometown is Konoha. My brother, a Jonin-sensei, and I came here on a mission. Are you a ninja? However, you appear to be my age. How a little boy could already be a ninja, baffled Gaara. Naruto scratched the back of his head, trying to figure out how he was going to escape this one. He was specifically instructed by Kakashi to only disclose his first name and the fact that he was from Konoha and was accompanied by a Jonin-sensei. I am still enrolled in the academy, but my brother permitted me to accompany him. Are you training to be a ninja as well? With a swift interjection, Naruto posed a question to the boy. Gaara nodded his head, regretting that the one person who had ever shown him kindness was from a distant village and would probably become his enemy in the future. Even so, he detests the thought of being his father's perpetual weapon. Gaara, don't seem so depressed. Ninjas are awesome. You get to defend your village and aid others. Naruto exclaimed with a lot of energy. A surge of anger shot through Redhead's tiny frame at the mention of the village. Why would I wish to keep this village safe? They only ever treat me badly and say the most horrible things. You have no idea what it's like to be despised without knowing why. I was never going to get along with this village. Gaara spoke with a spiteful rage. Even the boy with the raccoon eyes was startled by his abrupt declaration, and he turned to face the taller boy, praying that his little tirade hadn't scared him away. The redhead's words shocked and stunned Naruto, who at last understood why the earlier scene had seemed so familiar to him that it hurt. It was true that Gaara had received the same treatment as he had in Konoha. The taunts, the obscenities, it was all the same. The worst thing was that he actually understood what it was like to be hated without understanding why. The blonde stepped forward, embraced the other boy tightly, and left him frozen, feeling a newfound sense of camaraderie blossom in his chest. How long he had wished someone had taken care of this for him. He was able to seize me. How come the sand didn't stop him? Gaara stood with his arms hanging limp at his sides, stunned and too preoccupied to try to figure out how the blonde had broken through his impenetrable defense. His sand had always stirred when someone approached him. However, Naruto the boy was able to and gave him his very first hug. In all time. Naruto was about to let go of the redhead, believing that he didn't enjoy the hug, when he felt two timid hands tentatively encircle him. Gaara appeared to have never received a hug before. "We have so much in common, Gaara, and you don't even know it." It transpired precisely as he had anticipated. The peace treaty was not signed by the Kazekage. He was even threatened by this guy. Put another way, Kakashi was furious. With a failed mission on his badge, he had to return to Konoha because nothing had gone as planned. Amazingly good. The cherry on top of his disastrous situation was that he was currently searching Suna village for a certain blonde threat. An hour ago, the sun had set, and Naruto had failed to appear. A shocker. "You tiny bastard, just wait until I find you." It was an easy request. Meet at dusk, but is the brat up to the task? Oh no. As he leapt over the pillars of sand rock and the clay buildings, Kakashi was filled with mental rage. The proposal was not only rejected by the Kazekage, but he was also given the order to leave Suna by the next morning. He needed to locate Naruto immediately, or else shinobi would be pursuing him. Upon nearly resorting to summoning Pakun, his ninken, Kakashi eventually located his absentee younger brother. Even so, he was taken aback upon seeing the new business he had acquired. Beside Naruto sat a small boy with a red head who looked to be a few years younger. The reason he couldn't find him earlier was that they were sitting atop a roof close to the village's edge. Even though the red-haired boy had a somewhat familiar appearance, Kakashi was unable to pinpoint his exact location. The Hatake, a master of stealth, approached the two chattering boys with the intention of frightening his younger brother silly. As soon as he was a few steps behind them, he overheard their fascinating conversation. "So the Kazekage is your father? That is really awesome. My father would have loved to be a Hokage. They're the village's strongest group." To the more composed redhead, Naruto answered. "It's not that fantastic. Even if I could call him that, my father is not a nice man." With a tone that was obviously sad, the serious boy said. "What do you mean, Gaara? He has hated me for as long as I can remember. Like everyone else in the village, he believes that I am a demon. Though none of his shinobi have succeeded, he has given many of them orders to kill me." The abrupt and sobering confession left both Naruto stunned and the eavesdropping Kakashi shocked. "Knowing that your father desired your death was a terrible, horrifying experience." "That's me, then. I am at a loss for words. Sadly, Gaara and I have something in common. Neither of us has ever experienced the love of a parent. Still, you are at least aware of your parents' identities. Not even my own names are familiar to me. I can assure you, though, that despite your perception of being alone, you are not. Someone will always be by your side to assist in getting you up. That was my brother Kakashi and old man Hokage." Finally responding, Naruto smiled slightly at the younger boy. Kakashi, moved by the blonde's remarks, finally raised his voice, shocking the two boys in the process. "Very well said, Lilbro." Naruto turned to face the newcomer, his blue orbs growing larger as he realized how late it had become. "Oh shish. I neglected to schedule a meeting with him. Hey, brother, how are you? It's funny to have you here." Rubbing the back of his head sheepishly, Naruto babbled nervously. The silver-haired man shot the blonde boy an incredulous look, raising his eyebrows. Naruto perspired when he realized what was meant by the phrase, said look, realizing how much trouble he was in. "Did you forgot about a certain instruction, little brother?" Mentally thanking God that the blonde had at least kept the mask and hood on, Kakashi shot back. "I apologize. I think I got sidetracked while chatting to my new friend Gaara here," gesturing to the boy who had been suspiciously observing the older man. With his famous eye, smile and upbeat wave, Kakashi tried to make the stiff young redhead feel better. "Hey, I'm Kakashi, Naruto's elder brother. It's good to meet you, Gaara." "It is a pleasure to meet your acquaintance Kakashi-san." Gaara bowed in greeting. Kakashi was taken aback by the young boy's courteous demeanor and surmised that it was likely a result of being the Kazecage's son. It would also account for the boy's apparent level of maturity. Wealthy children. "It's unnecessary to be so formal. Kakashi is all right. I apologize for not being able to assist, but I heard your earlier chat with Naruto. You have to be the youngest of the Kazecage's children, correct?" Gaara nodded his head in agreement, but he wasn't sure what the man had heard. "Well, it is getting quite late, and Naruto and I have to head back to Konoha tonight on orders from your father. The silver-haired man saw distrust in the small redhead's eyes and spoke quickly. How come? However, we just arrived. Why must we depart already? Naruto let out an incredulous cry. I didn't get to try any of the food here. The case cage has threatened to attack if we don't depart by tonight, and the mission was a complete failure. I apologize, but we must go at this time, Gaki. Since you're with me, I can't afford to get into a fight. Naruto turned to face his new friend, a pout starting to form under his sad eyes. I have to go now, Gaara, but maybe one day we'll meet again. Yes, I do realize that. That would be very nice, Naruto. Despite his deepest desire for his newfound friend to stay by his side, Gaara grinned back in agreement. Before he could continue, though, they noticed Kakashi tensing up and focusing his lone eye off into the distance. What's the matter, brother? Naruto asked, his body tensing into a vigilant posture. Someone is moving in our direction. Their intentions don't seem friendly, and their chakra is suppressed. It has to be for us. Come, Naruto. We must now depart. The two males in masks nodded quickly before vanishing into the darkness, leaving their new friend, who was now very sad, to lean dejectedly against the metal railing that surrounded their chosen rooftop. Gaara looked up at the full moon, which was sitting high in the night sky and looked so lovely and alone. Even though they were both once surrounded by stars that were now hidden by dense clouds, it was alone that night, just like him. Abruptly, a harsh whistling noise pierced the calm evening atmosphere. He felt his sand shield lift up of its own volition, shielding him from several kunai hurled in his direction. Once more, he would never find tranquility. Why me? Why is it always me? As his sand rose once more to shield him from another round of the lethal projectiles, Gaara let out an agonized cry. It would appear that the shinobi's unexpected appearance had nothing to do with his brother or his new friend. Naruto, I was hoping you would stay. The night's shadows are a shinobi's most valuable ally. When used properly, it serves as both a weapon and a shield. Such were the thoughts of a certain silver-haired shinobi who was hiding from the view of a small boy with red hair and the person who was attacking him at the moment. Naruto was in a difficult situation and needed to be restrained in order to help his new friend. Big brother, why do we keep ourselves hidden? We must assist Gaara. Kakashi was glancing quickly around the room, shaking his head and gesturing for him to stop. It was clear that this was an attempt at assassination, but the fact that Gaara's assailant was a Suna shinobi made the situation more difficult. We cannot confront this shinobi, Naruto, openly. Can't you see his headband, too? He is one of Suna's shinobi. Attacking could be interpreted as a declaration of war. But we can't let Gaara be killed. I know, just let me think of something, alright. But their new friend had already resolved the matter before either of them noticed. But what drew their attention was a howl that sliced through the night of the desert, a loud cry of pain, a wail of despair filled with agony. No. Not you, uncle. Why did it have to be you that I killed? I'm by myself. Gaara whispered the desolation as if it were his mantra. The two-leaf shinobi realized how serious the situation had become and were frozen, stunned, in their hiding place. Gaara's own uncle was the one who was going to kill him. But what followed completely stunned and rendered them speechless. The chakra. Controlled sand erupted and raged, swirling and whirling around the grieving Gaara like a wicked tornado, until its haphazard movement struck a target. The center of the area that the sand was intended to hit was on the left side of his forehead, where there was a part in his unkempt red hair. When it hit its mark, the little boy let out a cry of sorrow and rage that seemed to have snapped something inside of him. Amidst all of this, Naruto eventually snapped out of his daze and hurried to assist his friend. Gaara, a recognizable voice's coarse tone clashed sharply with the erratic sand winds. However, it had fulfilled its intended function, and suddenly, the sand ceased its aerial assault and collapsed to the ground like a light switch. Once again the night had grown deathly still. Naruto. Gaara's voice was so tense from all the strain it had to bear. Gaara, how are you doing? Are you not hurting too badly, then? As Naruto drew closer to the kneeling boy and bloodied corpse, he spoke in a soothing tone that no one knew he was capable of. No, I'm all right, my uncle. The teal eyes of the redhead descended once more to the body of his enduringly devoted companion. His body shook as a wave of betrayal and hurt ran through it. He was dishonest. Did he ever genuinely think I was important? I'm sorry. He's gone, Gaara. Placing his hand on the younger boy's trembling shoulders, Naruto confirmed. The day had not gone as he had anticipated. Why him? Why him out of all the people my father could have sent? His soft voice betrayed his torment. Even Naruto was at a loss as to how to approach this. He had never experienced anything similar, so how was he supposed to be able to comfort her? Your dad is a heartless jerk. Gaara, he desired to break you. Refrain from giving him that satisfaction. As he walked up to the two boys, Kakashi finally spoke up. Kakashi, what will happen to Gaara now? That shinobi was killed by him. Naruto was no longer sure if the blonde's words were filled with worry or comfort as he held onto the smaller boy's shoulders. Nothing will happen because he is the son of the Kakashi, but your life will be even more miserable from here on out, I'm sorry to say. Kakashi gave a slightly dejected response. Such a life should not be required of any child. No, I can't allow Gaara to experience that. I'm friends with him. Come to Konoha with us, Gaara. Our Hokage will undoubtedly assist you. He'll protect you, he's very strong. You are welcome to move in with me. How do you say? Leave. Uncertain, Gaara remarked. Though he had considered doing so in the past, he had never mustered the bravery to venture beyond the sandy cliffs of Sunakaga. Yes, you did tell me that you were unhappy in this village. Then accompany us to Konoha. You could resemble my younger brother. With tearful eyes, the red-headed boy turned to face the bright blue orbs that had become the distressed child's lifeline. Little brother, he whispered. Similar to his alleged elder sister, he was biologically blessed with a brother, but he lacked one in his life. He just instilled fear in them all. They never offered consoling words or even just small tokens of affection. No, they disregarded him in the same way that his father had. Observing the exchange between the two, Kakashi remained mute while attempting to devise a solution for this intricate situation. Taking Gaara with us would be the best course of action, but that would require me to devise a plausible plan for his death. Then having to tell Lord Third Hokage about this. The silver-haired man had considered his options and devised a scheme that would fool everyone in Suna into thinking their Jinchurikin had died. He was reminded of the significance of the youngest Kakashi child by the sand display. Okay, Gaara, I believe it is best if you accompany us to Konoha. Because he is a just man, our Hokage will definitely help you when we get there. Be aware that once you decide to leave, you must cut all connections to Suna until you are strong enough to defend yourself against the inevitable consequences. The young redhead was lost in contemplation as the seconds passed. He could live to regret his decision if he made the incorrect one at this pivotal moment in his life. What's left in this place for me? My dad despises me. The village hates me for being here, and my siblings are afraid of me. The only two people who have ever been nice to me are Naruto and his brother. My father gave my uncle the order to betray me, despite the fact that he was also kind. Can I rely on them for my entire future? With a final glance at the two figures next to him, Gaara knew the answer. He sensed their acceptance and goodness radiating from them. They emanated a tranquility that he had never experienced before. It seems to come naturally from his new friend, who is blonde. He felt as though he had been looking for that feeling his entire life. He was forced to make a decision. Yes, I do realize that. I promise to stay loyal to you and Naruto, Kakashi Sama, and I will depart from Sunakaga. I appreciate you doing this. With a nod of comprehension, Kakashi reached out and gently tousled Gaara's prickly red hair in a manner reminiscent of how he handled Naruto. The boy had never experienced such treatment before, so his actions were shocking. Not even his uncle had behaved in such a liberated manner toward him. However, he was perplexed once more as to why the proximity of the Konoha shinobi had no effect on his usually erratic sand. Gaki, it is not a problem. We are running out of time. Therefore, I ask that you two pay close attention. At last, something had gone as planned. The brilliant Kakashi Hatake had taken advantage of the Kakashi in his village. Within minutes, the lone possessor of the Sharingan had devised a scheme to pretend Sabaku no Gaara was dead. And it had functioned flawlessly. There could have been no better strategy. In case the Kakashi followed through on his threat to attack, Kakashi had planned ahead and sent a masked, hooded blonde and two shadow clones disguised as himself to the gates to officially leave the village, when he realized it would take some time to find Naruto. Without a suspicion, the two Chunins on duty allowed his clones to leave the village with great ease, promptly informing the Kakashi of their departure. Stupid people. The silver-haired shinobi realized then and there that the boy could not stay in this village any longer when Gaara lost it and attacked his attacker. He was an innocent person lost in Sunakaga's ignorance and darkness. The redhead and Naruto had so many things in common that it would hurt to think that he abandoned someone like his sensei's son to the wolves. The last straw for Gaara was the death of her so-called uncle. The boy was left with the knowledge that not only had the one person he had ever trusted in his life attempted to kill him, but that same person had abandoned him, leaving him defenseless against the cruelty of an already hopeless world. However, Kakashi had noticed that the young boy's eyes had come back to life the instant he heard Naruto's voice. He knew exactly the hope that was there, even if it was only for a brief moment. The two of them seemed to have something in common now. It appears that Naruto, the blonde, hyperactive, and unpredictable threat, was also the redhead's lifeline. If the one-eyed shinobi hadn't had to take care of Naruto in lieu of his sensei, he would have definitely followed the path set by his late father long ago. Gaara was likely the only person who would ever be able to comprehend the saving grace that Naruto brought with him whenever he flashed that brilliant smile and laughed as if he had no cares in the world. The whiskered child and everyone else in his meager life had no idea just how much Naruto meant to him. A smile that transported the Hitaki to memories he had preferred to be long forgotten. Not only had his sensei's dying gift saved a village full of stupid people, but it had also saved him. A young man lost in a world of pride that consumes him in despair. He would give his all to ensure Naruto was content and achieved all of his dreams, even though he would never be able to repay the blonde, mischievous boy or his wonderful teacher and adoptive father. Today marked the beginning of the first payment. Naruto would experience a certain amount of happiness as a result of Kakashi saving Gaara, and his conscience would not permit him to leave someone in need. Not once more. The copy ninja put his carefully thought-out plan into action as soon as Gaara agreed to let him go from Suna. "Alright boys, this is what we will do," Kakashi went on when he noticed them nodding. "Gaara, can you control your sand well enough to use it from far distances?" After giving it some thought and trying to figure out exactly what the tall one-eyed man had in mind, the red-headed man replied, "Yes, but I have to be able to see where it is." "Good, that will work. I need you two to follow me and cloak your chakra." From that faded rooftop, three dark figures leapt away, leaving only a small figure kneeling next to the bloody corpse of a Jonin shinobi. This figure was there for a specific reason. It didn't move or make any noise. The lone figure saw two others approaching and gave them a slow look before hunching over and covering the corpse. Its goal had been successfully completed. The scene in front of the two Suna shinobi, who had arrived on their cage's orders after hearing a loud disturbance, had left them stunned. The demon lay there, kneeling over their fallen comrade's body. The tiny monster had withstood every attempt to kill him, but it appeared that they had succeeded at last this evening. The two adult men recoiled at the first move made by the little red-haired boy. They were shocked, however, to discover that the redhead just gave them a quick glance before slumping over the body. Glistening in the moonlight, a kunai displayed its lethal radiance, with all but a few inches of its hilt piercing the fully clothed body of a 6-year-old boy. It was tinted dark crimson and gleamed, a red, sticky material slowly running down the blade. Amazing. The one thing that had been thought impossible had finally brought down the red-haired monster that had scared a village to the brink of murder. He had passed away, the Shukaku's holder. It was Sabaku no Gaara's death. The two shinobi gave each other a nervous glance. And now, what were they supposed to do? The more courageous of the two, a fair-haired man in his early 20s, moved in closer to confirm the small Jinchuriken's demise. But before he could reach the red-haired boy's fallen body, a silent order was given that the two shinobi missed. At the command of its owner, the sand that had been lying on the rooftop had come to life. As more and more sand combined to create a whirling vortex of golden earth, its nature became violent. The body of the supposed Gaara was shielded from harm by the swirling sand. As soon as the sand barrier blocked the two stunned shinobi's view, the blood clone, which Kakashi had created the moment they left to hide in the shadows of one of the nearby rooftops, dispelled itself. Sand ceased in midair and rose slowly higher into the dark desert sky as the clone's memory returned to its creator, where, after a short distance, burst into a dust storm that filled the air. The two shinobi, frozen to their bones, coughed up the bits of sand they had inhaled. What had they been witnessing all along? The shinobi looked fervently in the direction of the starting point as soon as the sand cloud disappeared and they could see clearly once more. They were shocked to find that the demon had vanished, leaving only the body of Yashimaru, one of their best, and a sizable patch of dark blood in its place. Their minds raced with the same idea until they reached a comforting realization. The creature had vanished. He was no longer in a trance, and the breathtaking show of sand that had scared them was gone. Without a doubt, he was dead. That's how a demon ends its life. The two Suna shinobi practically flew from the rooftop to spread the word, not wanting to waste any more time. The creature had perished. ... They bought it. Time to go, boys. The two Jinchurinkin were startled out of their reverie by the man with silver hair's abrupt command. The smaller of the two was struggling to make sense of everything that had happened in the last hour. As he scanned their immediate area for intruders, Kakashi said, "Gaara, we cannot use the gate since my clones hanged as Naruto and I already passed through there. Do you know any other way out of the village?" The redhead gave his face a pondering look as he gave it some thought. "Yes, there is, but we have to leave now before any of the patrols start." With no more encouragement needed, the three departed from their hiding place and trailed the Shukaku's bearer to the deepest recesses of the secret sand village. As he approached a group of jagged rocks, Gaara said, "There is a tunnel hidden behind the rocks large enough for us to pass through. It leads to the outskirts of the cliffs." With a little compliment, Kakashi said, "Perfect. That will work nicely." The redhead, unaccustomed to such attention, blushed. Before anyone could argue with him, Naruto chirped happily and hopped over the big, dusty boulders, saying, "I'll go first." A loud, boisterous voice that could only belong to one person called out from a distance, "I'm out. Someone else can come through now." Gently nudging the boy forward, Kakashi smiled and said, "Go on, Gaara. I'll be right behind you." The quiet boy nodded, then jumped to the other side of the rather big rocks, following his friend's lead. Gaara was relieved to see that the tunnel was bigger than he had remembered, but he assumed that the rocks had worn away over time. He hadn't visited this location in a while. After emerging from the cramped area, Gaara was greeted by a smiling boy with blonde hair who had taken off his mask to reveal a face marked with whiskers. Why would he wear the mask? Compared to Gaara, he would have stood out considerably more. Gaara turned back to face the waiting member of this adventure, leaving the comments for a later time. He cupped his hands over his mouth to help his voice bounce back. "I'm out." As he crawled through the alleged tunnel, Kakashi thought to himself, laughing, simple and to the point, but it really felt more like a large crack with jagged, sharp edges that tore at his clothes. Most likely, all Naruto and Gaara had to do was avoid having their heads hit the ceiling. The seasoned Jonin grumbled to himself as he struggled through the sand. Covered ground, lucky them. At last, Kakashi emerged from the cramped tunnel and reached his full 6'3" height. Never had he been happier to see a desert, but he was still a long way from winning. The challenge remained of traversing the terrain without encountering any Suna shinobi and reporting this to the Hokage upon their return. Yay me. He's going to chew me alive. The more he considered his predicament, the more he couldn't help but feel a little jealous of the vivacious blonde who was chatting with the quiet redhead. "Naruto, you will be the death of me." Naruto wouldn't be in this situation if he hadn't made friends with a boy who was going to be killed. He became increasingly aware of how much the young blonde boy and himself resembled siblings as time went on. Being the older of the two, he was always the one to clean up the younger's mess. Figures I'd get the short end of the stick. The silver-haired man thought to himself, not so cheerily, but that he was immensely proud of himself for having saved an innocent child from a fate worse than death. Though Kakashi was certain that Gaara would have escaped every attempt on his life, it would have come at a terrible cost for such a small child. Only his mental health would be at risk. In addition, the longer Gaara's seal remained unfixed, the greater the likelihood of the Shukaku escaping. "I need to persuade the Lord Third Hokage to get in touch with Jiraiya about this. He's the last sealing master and the only one qualified to fix such a seal." After a while, Kakashi decides it's best to postpone thinking about such things and picks up speed to catch up to the two boys who had gotten quite ahead. "Naruto, we will have to increase our speed if we want to reach Konoha tomorrow before nightfall." The young child with the whiskers said cockily as he picked up the pace to match the towering shinobi. "All right, brother, but don't complain when we go too fast for ya old geezer, all right." With no other option, Gaara followed suit, and soon an endurance test was underway. And who would slow down first? Which two Jinchurinkin, or the seasoned shinobi? No matter how strong they believed themselves to be, the young boys were no match for an experienced shinobi after a few hours. Kakashi, amused at the obvious outcome he had predicted, called a halt and made a makeshift campsite. It was nearly 8 in the afternoon when they had escaped Suna. If he had to guess, it was almost midnight now. The fact that they were far into the adjacent forest of Konoha's borders was now hidden by the gloomy skies. One-eyed shinobi had taken every precaution to ensure their safety until they arrived on friendly soil. His small race had been a covert measure to make sure they were far from Suna shinobi that they could stumble upon on their journey. Speaking of which, It would be unwise for Gaara to enter Konoha with his face exposed, otherwise, someone might identify him as the current Kazukage's son. Kakashi grinned and nearly gave himself a concussion for thinking such a foolish thing. Every day, he hid his face from everyone. No one ever asked him about it, and when they did, he would just not give a straight answer. Kakashi arranged his extra sleeping bags and called the boys to sit next to him as he built a small fire. There were some important matters to discuss. Naruto, may I please have the mask I gave you? Naruto frowned slightly as he looked up at him in response to the serious tone of his voice. Yeah, sure thing, big brother. Here ya go. Thank you. Gaara, please wear this going forward, Kakashi said, holding the dark cloth out in front of the redhead with large eyes. Tentatively, Gaara asked as he took the mask from the shinobi's grasp, why? For the same reasons Naruto wore one when he came into your village. To hide his identity. Remember, Gaara no Sabaku is dead. A proclamation will be made known to the other shinobi nations, and if anyone were to see you alive and kicking in Konoha, there will be severe consequences to pay. Gaara, only 5 years old, nodded, having come to understand village politics quite well. His young psyche had suffered from being made to train as a weapon. I understand, but how will we explain my appearance to your Hokage? Naruto shot back with a smile big enough to melt glaciers, saying, don't worry about the old man. He will understand. Besides, I won't let anyone hurt my new little brother. Orphans have to look out for one another. Naruto is right. Our Hokage is a just man and will be the only person we will tell the truth about Gaara's reason in being in Konoha. Is that clear? Crystal. The exuberant boy saluted in confirmation. Yes, sir. The older man smiled and said, you don't have to call me sir, Gaara. I'm not that old. Kakashi is fine. Alright then, Kakashi-san. It's time to hit the hay, Gaki. Do whatever works for you. In a tone that discouraged debate, Kakashi said, so you two go rest up. I'll keep first watch. The two boys turned and walked toward the maid, upbedding without another word. Night, brothers. The blonde beauty fell asleep quickly and seemed to have no trouble at all, with some drool already trailing from his open mouth. His other two companions looked on in jealousy and laughter at his easygoing demeanor. Gaara said, Kakashi-san, I can keep watch. I don't need to sleep. Realizing that the man who had assisted in his rescue didn't need to stay awake since he would never be able to get even a little restful sleep. Kakashi softly replied, not wanting to risk waking the blonde hurricane, I'm aware, Gaara. I'll keep you company. I'm not much of a sleeper myself during missions. As you wish. The boy with a raccoon-eyed expression muttered softly, mimicking the silver-haired man. After a while of eerie silence, Kakashi was unable to resist the chance to finally satisfy his curiosity. He had made an effort to wait for the right time, but it would not have happened at that exact moment. He wasn't usually the type to strike up a conversation and hated social situations in general, but he had to ask. I'm curious, Gaara. You don't have to answer if you don't like, but why did you agree to come with us? Not that I'm not glad you're here, but I'm simply intrigued why the child of the Kazekage would turn away from his own village. The boy had stiffened at first, and Kakashi had thought he wouldn't respond, but then he saw his small shoulders loosen up and the redhead spoke again. My father wouldn't stop until either I died or become what he always wished I'd be. Kakashi gently prodded, being careful not to push the boy too far. And what's that? A monster, an invincible weapon. But I never wanted to hurt anyone, Gaara replied, his voice becoming almost silent in the process. I see. Do you wish to be a shinobi then when you grow older? A contemplative look crossed the young child's face. If you had asked me yesterday I would have said no, but after meeting you in Naruto, I've changed my mind. I never knew that my sand could be seen as something cool and not something that makes me a monster. Kakashi quietly laughed, figuring his younger brother had healed people once more with his magical touch. Yes, Naruto does have a way with words. Nodding in agreement, Gaara continued, he was the first person to treat me kindly and not as if I was a disease. He saved my life. And I will do anything to protect my first true friend. So yes, I want to become a shinobi for Naruto. That is quite admirable, Gaara. You and Naruto have much in common that you haven't even realized it yet. One day I'm sure you both will, however. I'm sure Naruto has told you of his grand dream to be Hokage, hasn't he? If he hasn't, I'll be surprised. There isn't a single person who he has ever come across who he hasn't told. Kakashi thought. Yes, he did. That's another reason why I have decided to become a shinobi. I have a debt with him which I can never repay. So I wish to do everything in my power to aid him in achieving his dream. Being a shinobi, I can be of much more help than if I was a civilian. The older boy understood the silver-haired man's question to be a question, but it was more like a statement when he said, "That is very true. I also have a debt to repay him, and I think you understand more than anyone else could what I mean, don't you?" "Yes, Kakashi-san, I believe I do." They sat around a blazing fire that offered warmth against the chilly night, and after a moment, a reassuring quiet replaced the earlier deafening silence between the two figures. After spending a few minutes, Gaara inquired, "What is Konoha like?" "It is the most beautiful place you can ever imagine. The people are kind, misguided at times, but are generally good-hearted people. There are thousands of trees surrounding it and the sights are just as wondrous. You will find peace there, Gaara. I can promise you this." Gaara nodded, understanding, feeling the sting of something he'd long since forgotten. Thrills. He felt excited about something for the first time in a very long time. Perhaps destiny had finally redirected itself for him. It was impossible to wait for morning to come. You would think it would be better if someone gently woke you up rather than having multiple furry mutts jump on you and slobber at a rate of 1 liter per minute. As he struggled with the heavy weights, a boy with wild hair and fair complexion cried out into the early morning sunrise, "Ugh. So gross? Kakashi, you bastard. Get these guys off me." A few meters away, an amused voice said, "All right fellas, he's awake, let him up now." Wearing a sour expression, Naruto attempted in vain to remove the dog slobber from his face. This fine morning, his older brother had quite the sense of humor. The blonde rose and stretched from his makeshift bed, sighing in complete defeat. If his cracking back was any indication, the ground wasn't the most comfortable place to sleep. "Ah, man. I hate mornings," a second voice winced and said, "Naruto, please try not to be so loud." The mop of blonde hair, momentarily confused, turned toward the foreign voice's source and instantly remembered the past few days. The older shinobi was surprised that the blonde had a different voice other than screaming as Naruto sheepishly replied in a much quieter tone, "Good morning, Gaara. Sorry, I'm not much of a morning person." Kakashi joked as he sealed up the last of the camping supplies in his containment seal. "Well, Gaara, you already have such an amazing effect on this gaki that I for one I'm looking forward to the other future changes." "Hey." A boy with spiky golden hair turned menacingly toward the man with one eye, and an undignified shot rang out. Before Naruto could say anything more, Gaara hurriedly said, "When will we arrive in Konoha?" He was really irritated by loud voices after spending so much time in the silence of the night. As the trio started moving again along a worn-out, dusty path, Kakashi said, "Oh, I'd say around mid-day. You two actually endured running for quite some time last night. We're already at the border between fire and wind country." "Awesome. I can't wait to introduce you to everyone, Gaara. Konoha is so great. There's lots and lots of trees and water. You're gonna love it there, believe it." Gaara felt the corner of his mouth curl into a sincere smile for once. The entrances. Despite their immense size and intimidating presence, they appeared to extend a cordial welcome to the fatigued travelers, known as Konohagakure now. As Gaara turned to face the massive stone walls of Konoha, he was only able to say, "Whoa." The fact that he was surrounded by millions of tall, green-leafed trees was the second most astounding thing. He had only ever seen such forested buildings in textbook illustrations from the history books his private tutors had made him read. The large village appeared to be surrounded by trees, seemingly seeking to shield it from all the enemies it had amassed over time. The little reed head said to his two taller friends, "I can see why it was named Hidden in the Leaves." "Yeah, see, I told ya this place was awesome." The blonde wonder was reading an orange-covered book at his own slow pace when the one-eyed shinobi said, "Yes, it is very beautiful." And it really was. Gaara couldn't even recall having seen a place so wonderful before. Suna was a desolate, dusty village with very few plants. Still, the verdant surroundings stretches for miles in every direction here. No wonder my father hated them so much. Indeed, Konoha was a very fortunate village. Since hundreds of rivers flowed through and around the famous shinobi village, there was no need to worry about a drought here as there had been in Senokagure. The arched bridges spanning numerous rivers were equally exquisitely sculpted. The buildings, which stood tall and proud in the center of the area encircled by the massive wall of defense, were testaments to the wealth of the region. The red-headed child couldn't help but notice that it was only fitting that a village as bright and happy as Konohagakure should give birth to a person as happy as his new blonde older brother. He was walking along the busy streets of Konohagakure. That is, at least, what he had thought at first, until he noticed a very familiar scene. A scenario that is far too painfully similar. Nevertheless, he was the one looking in from the outside this time. The looks. Hateful rumors whispered. They remained in that location. Why? Nobody recognized him. He was aware that his true identity was hidden behind the black mask Kakashi had him wearing. Who, then, were the peasants swearing under their breaths? As they continued down the dusty street, the explanation became painfully obvious. The ray of sunshine he had found. The boy who made life meaningful for him. The people despised and cursed him greatly. Naruto. As he turned to face him, a shadow that had never existed before covered his savior's brilliant blue eyes, and something inside of him ached. Then, just as the glares got to be unbearable for him, something strong seemed to spill over, and a feeling of murderous intent enveloped the busy street. The tall, irate shinobi with silver hair was the source of it. His one open eye was beaming with rage, but it wasn't directed at the person he'd been glaring at earlier. No, it was directed at everyone who dispersed and gave them a wide berth across the road. The ones who muttered hateful and blasphemous words. The ones who made his new brother's face look so sad when it should have only been happy. They were the ones who had to endure Kakashi Hitaki's wrath. Picking up the limp hand by the normally vivacious blonde's side, Gaara pulled him faster through the streets where so much hate was held. They had not lost their older guardian, for a familiar shadow trailed overhead. The redhead tugged at Naruto's arm more quickly, wanting to escape as much as he did. What made them treat him the way they had in Suna? It wasn't a monster, Naruto. The only monster there was him. The familiar voice of Kakashi, who was standing carelessly atop a pole, rang out overhead. Naruto, Gaara, slow down, we're here. With the gracefulness of a cat, Kakashi leapt down beside them and stood eye level with the two boys. Pulling his hand away from Gaara's smaller one, Naruto moaned, "You didn't have to scare them, Kakashi. I'm used to it." "You might be, but I don't like it. Besides, that's not the kind of impression I want Gaara to have of his new home." The red-haired boy they had saved from Suna was standing right next to the blonde, and he jolted in alarm as if he remembered that he was there. The blonde said sheepishly, grinning broadly and scratching the back of his head, "Aw man, sorry about that, Gaara. Those villagers sure can be moody." Despite their apparent happiness, the boy and the man were able to see right through the facade. "Naruto, is this what you meant when you said you knew how it felt to be unwanted?" The 7-year-old boy, who was blonde, appeared to have been stabbed, and he turned his head to hide his pain from the younger child. Naruto nodded sharply and turned to face the two people he had become so close to. "Yeah, I know how it feels. This is why you and me have so much in common, Gaara. I hope this doesn't change the way you see Konoha. This place really is beautiful. I love it here even if many of the villagers don't want me around. I have precious people I want to protect like Big Brother Kakashi, Old Man Hokage, Iruka, Sensei, Old Man Ichiraku and Ayame-ne-chan that live here. Now you're here too, Gaara, and you're one of my precious people who I want to protect. That's why I'll be Hokage someday, so I can protect Konoha and my precious people. Believe it." Naruto proclaimed, his past sadness forgotten with his renewed surge of determination to turn the hand fate had dealt him. Gaara was astounded by Naruto's ability to maintain his strength by himself. Rather than crumbling as he had, Naruto had struggled to emerge from the abyss they had both fallen into. Now, he was using all of his strength and resolve to get the two of them out of there. That's how. With the love he holds for them is how he succeeds. Gaara wrapped his smaller arms around the blonde and nodded understandingly, a smile lurking beneath the black mask. Astonished the fair boy. "You will be Hokage someday. I do believe it." The significance of those words and how they would affect Naruto that day was beyond the red-haired boy's comprehension. A second one. "Two people believe in me. I cannot let them down." With a firm embrace in return, Naruto thanked the younger boy in silence for his remarks. Kakashi abruptly spoke, grabbing the two boys' attention. I really hate to break up this touchy scene, fellas, but we kinda have company." Glancing up, they observed that the Lord Third Hokage was standing beside a silver-haired shinobi who was perspiring profusely. Naruto joyfully broke free from the hug to approach the older man and said, "Hey old man, ya miss me?" The Sandame looked at the offended blonde with amusement and said, "Yes, I did miss you, Naruto. Though I will probably miss the peace that was here when you were gone even more." With a raised fist, Naruto angrily yelled back, "Hey, take that back." Hiruzen asked, glaring at the anxiously perspiring man who was slowly backing away, "Okay, alright. Calm down. Now why don't you tell me who your young friend is?" I don't recall ever seeing him in the village before, much less if he wore a mask regularly like I know a certain Jonin does. Kakashi, is there anything you'd like to say? Well, you see, it is quite a long story. Why don't we tell you in your office? This isn't something to be discussed in public, Kakashi responded, smirking a little. The Hokage narrowed his eyes at the taller man and nodded slowly, then turned back to his original destination. Very well, come you three. Alright, Gaara, you get to see the Hokage's office neat, huh? The incessantly cheerful blonde exclaimed, bouncing along with the others. The redhead shrugged and moved silently behind the shinobi as they made their way toward the Hokage tower. So let me get this straight. Not only did the treaty fail, but you brought back the believed deceased son of the current reigning Kakashi. Kakashi whimpered and barely managed to say, yes sir. The enraged Hokage glared at the short, startled blonde, saying, what in the hell were you thinking? Explain yourself, Naruto. Why are you blaming me? Was Naruto's outrageous response. Kakashi is one of the best Jonin I have under my command, and never has this happened in a mission of his. So that means you were the cause of this. Start explaining, young man. The man with whiskers, who was looking down at his feet and refusing to meet the man's disapproving gaze, said, geez, gonna pin this on me, huh? Well, I guess that this time you might possibly be right. Of course I'm right. I'm not Hokage for nothing, you know. Alright, dang. It all started when me and Kakashi got separated in the village. After telling an hour-long story, Naruto concluded, leaving behind a disbelieving Hokage who was now thinking he was far too old for this kind of thing, and here we are with Gaara in Konoha. Oh. The paperwork that this will bring will be endless. Naruto waved to the silent boy next to him and said, cheer up, old man. Think about how cool it'll be to have a shinobi with Gaara's super jutsu. The Sandaime asked with a newfound curiosity, super jutsu? What are you talking about, Naruto? I think it would be best if I explained this, Lord Hokage. Naruto, why don't you take Gaara for a tour of the village and meet me back here when you're hungry? Alright. I'll take you guys to get some food. Kakashi replied quickly. This was not the part of the conversation he wanted the boys to be in. Without waiting for an answer, Naruto pulled the boy to his feet by the hand and disappeared out the door, barely remembering to close it behind him. Alright. Ramen. Come. On Gaara, you gotta see the village, it's so awesome. After the two boys left, they heard the door shut firmly, and Sarutobi glared at the one-eyed shinobi who was leaning against one of his bookshelves. Well, start explaining, Kakashi. The silver-haired man replied gravely as he stood for the first time since entering the room in a businesslike manner. Yes, sir. Gaara is the youngest son of the current Kakashi. I'm sure you've heard the many rumors surrounding this particular boy. Well, I can assure you that some of them are true. Hiruzen could feel a headache forming in the deepest recesses of his temple. Please elaborate, because I fear that I will be correct in my assumption and this could spell utter catastrophe for our village. Why was it that the youngest ones had to be the troublemakers all the time? As he prepared to deliver this section of the report, Kakashi took a deep, comforting breath. Gaara is the Jinchurikin of the one-tailed beast known as Shukaku. And that super jutsu Naruto mentioned is actually an automatic defensive manipulation of sand that protects the boy from harm. It is laced with the traces of the beast's chakra, but I could detect the faintest signature of the boy's own chakra mixed in there. If enough of his own chakra is used, he can move the sand at will. The Hokage nodded slowly, knowing, and with a heavy heart. The news was extremely serious. How in the world could he have ever let Kakashi take Naruto? It seems I was correct in my assumption. If you knew this, Kakashi, why the devils would you even risk bringing the boy here? The Hokage issued a harsh warning. Kakashi strained to respond, preferring to gaze out the window, into the village. He reminds me of Naruto. The boy has been treated much worse than Naruto ever was, and I couldn't just leave him there, especially after witnessing firsthand an attempt on his life. Sarutobi's voice became louder and louder as he chastised his shinobi, and he was grateful that he had sent all of his Anbu out of the room before beginning the discussion. Yes, it is clear to me the similarities in the boys, but this a very grave matter, Kakashi. If word should reach Suna that the Kakage's youngest child, the Jinchurikin no less, was still alive and in Konoha, we'd have another war on our hands. They were better at gossiping among themselves than housewives. Before the Hokage had a heart attack, Kakashi attempted to make amends, saying, I've already thought about that, sir. The Hokage looked at the tall man incredulously and said, Oh, have you really? What do you have planned to prevent this then? With a tone laced with sarcasm. Well, that kanji engraved on Gaara's forehead appeared the night we left Suna. So none of the shinobi, or even the Kazekage himself, will recognize him by that mark, and if he wears a mask like the one I wear, then there is a chance that no one will suspect his identity immediately. The Hokage inhaled deeply and asked, and what of those dark markings around his eyes? Maybe Kakashi was competent at what he was doing. Yes, that will be more a problem to cover up. Yet I hope that perhaps Master Jiraiya knows a seal that could help us with this problem, and another one I wish to address. What other problem? The senior Sarutobi asked, raising his eyebrows and leaning back in his chair in a contemplative manner while puffing on his pipe. He would never know how he got to be this old. With a gravelly voice, Kakashi replied, the boy doesn't sleep, sir. Doesn't sleep. The Jonin sighed and ran a distressed gloved hand through his gravity, defying silver locks. That's right, since our journey home, he has not once slept. The Biju sealed within him does not allow him to sleep without the risk of the demon taking over. I see, Hiruzen said as he took another drag from his smoke, going into a deep contemplation. Kakashi looked wearily at the thoughtful man and said, I think the seal is the issue. If Master Jiraiya could fix it or alter it, then perhaps Gaara could finally get some much-needed rest. Sarutobi stroked his goatee thoughtfully and said, yes, it would only affect the boy psychologically if this goes untreated over time. Alright, I'll send for my wayward student, but from now on, you are in charge of watching over the boy. Kakashi pretended, understood sir, but what do you mean by watch over? He had a terrible feeling about where this might go. Please not that. The elder grinned maliciously as he watched the shocked man with amusement, as in you are now his new legal guardian. I will have the paperwork ready by the time Jiraiya arrives. Wait, legal guardian, as in adoption. Indeed, that was, regrettably, what Kakashi had anticipated. Yes, is that a problem? Because as far as I'm concerned you have possibly endangered the entire village and it should be your responsibility to ensure that war doesn't break out because of your recklessness. Yeah, I've heard adoption is fantastic at this time of year, laughed a sheepish Kakashi. Oh boy. Naruto pointed to the respective buildings they walked past, enlightening the small, red-headed boy wearing a mask. That's the Ninja Academy over there and that's where Kakashi gets those really weird books of his. As they strolled through the streets, no one even bothered to look twice. For now, it appeared that Kakashi's threat had been enough. Although it was a fairly warm afternoon, Naruto noticed that his younger companion, Gaara, was shivering. Hey Gaara, you cold or something? He asked worriedly. Gaara replied, it's much cooler here than it was back in my old village. He rubbed his arms to try to keep some of his warmth, but all of a sudden a dark cloth covered his vision. Why are you giving me your cloak? With a flirtatious smile, Naruto answered, well, I don't need it and you do. It might be a little big, but it'll keep ya warm, before strolling away down the street. Gaara removed the dark navy hooded cloak from his head, pulled it on quickly, and was immediately enveloped in the much-needed warmth. He is always so kind to me. The redhead, grinning, ran to catch up to the blonde boy and was taken aback to see him chatting to three other boys, who appeared to be a little older than him, a short distance away. He replayed the earlier warning from Kakashi in his mind. Make sure that no one figures out who you really are, Gaara, alright? Keep your most noticeable features hidden. Gaara considered his options and pulled the hood over his dark maroon hair to further conceal his identity before making his way over to the group of older boys. As a tiny, hooded figure approached the four boys, Naruto said, hey there you are. Come meet my friends Shikamaru, Choji, Kiba, and his ninja dog Akamaru. This here is my buddy Gaara. Silently, Gaara said, hello, coming to stand beside the boy with the whiskers, his eyes never taking off the ground. Kiba, the more gregarious of the three, cheerfully responded with an Akamaru yell, yo. Shikamaru and Choji greeted each other in unison as the latter went on munching on a bag of chips with a barbecue flavor. I've never seen you around before. You visiting Konoha? Shikamaru continued, casting a curious glance at the hooded boy. Now, even on a fairly warm day with a light breeze, why would a small boy dress in a cloak and mask? Nervously, Naruto interrupted, no, what makes you say that? As he tried to come up with a plausible explanation. This was not going to be easy because Shikamaru was very intelligent. The young Nara smirked and replied, oh nothing, except he's wearing very warm clothes on a rather nice day for us natives of Konoha. Gaara quickly responded, hoping that his small lie wouldn't be discovered, I live here, but I really don't go out much. My older brother asked Naruto to watch over me today since he had a meeting with the Hokage. It was fortunate that he could conjure up a credible tale. Naruto nodded and assumed a heroic stance, saying, "That's right. Kakashi gave me an important mission. I have to babysit his little brother." Kiba spoke with disgust, "Oh, that sucks. Babysitting is the worst." The blonde sheepishly defended, rubbing the back of his head, "It ain't so bad. Gaara's fun to have around. I've always wanted a little brother." Deep twin pools of teal widened slightly at the mention of little brother, and then a small pale hand clutched tightly to the seam of the black shirt a certain bewildered-looking boy was wearing. Naruto pretended not to notice the foreign pressure on his clothes. Gaara must be getting nervous. "Well fellas, I gotta get Gaara back to his older brother. So I'll see you guys later." A voice stopped the fiery blonde in his tracks before she could turn to go. Shikamaru handed Naruto a cream-colored folder and said, "Wait, Naruto. We've actually been looking for you. We have something from Iruka-sensei." As he took the object that was being offered, Naruto asked, "Iruka-sensei. What is it?" Kiba replied, amusing himself by smirking at his blonde friend's expression of dismay, "It's all the homework you've missed." To his horror and the delight of his friends, Naruto yelled, "Homework? What the hell, seriously?" as he opened the folder and saw that it contained several sheets of the dreaded paperwork. "Aw, man, this sucks." As a pout formed on Naruto's tan face, Shikamaru sighed and smirked slightly. "Well, this wouldn't be a problem if you had been in class, even as much as a drag that it is." As he was finishing his snack, Choji inquired, "Why were you missing Naruto?" The blonde wonder, scratching his chin, debated whether or not to tell the truth when he suddenly recalled one of the requirements his older brother had said if he could accompany him. "No matter what, you cannot tell anyone you were in Suna. Understand?" After having a brief flashback, Naruto concluded it would be best to follow Kakashi's advice. "Well, I wasn't feeling too good. I think I had the flu or something." The three boys seemed satisfied with his response, nodding their heads in understanding. Fortunately for him, Naruto had only missed a few days as opposed to the planned week. The blonde boy waved as he grabbed a rather startled Gaara and hurried off toward the imposing Hokage tower. "Now I seriously have to go. Kakashi will be waiting for us. Bye guys." Shaking his head, Shikamaru sighed and turned back the way he and his companions had come. What a knuckle-head. Though Naruto was obviously hiding something, but if he wanted us to know, he would have told us. Thinking about it too much will be too troublesome. Keeping that in mind, the boy with dark hair clasped his hands behind his head and looked up at the cloud-filled blue sky with a lazy gaze. His complex mind pushed all previous ideas to the back. There was a loud bang, and his office door flew open. "It looks like they cut their tour a bit short." Sarutobi, looking askance at the small figures at his doorway, had a fond smile on his aged face. "Back so soon, boys? Surely you didn't see the entire village in such a short time." Naruto informed the Hokage as he and Gaara approached the desk and sat down on the offered seats. "Well, no, not really. We kinda bumped into Shikamaru, Choji, and Kiba earlier, and well, I didn't want them questioning Gaara too much. So I thought it was a good time to come and get Kakashi so we can go get some ramen." "Where is he anyway?" Naruto said. Hiruzen laughed and smirked as he pointed to the dark blue couch in the office corner, where a silver-haired man who was far too familiar was stretched out. "Why's Kakashi sleeping?" The Hokage laughed again, fighting hard not to laugh aloud. "Well, I gave him some news and he fainted, but he should be fine in a couple minutes. Would you boys like something to drink while we wait?" The older shinobi received two identical nods from people with red and blonde hair. The two Jinchurikin and Hokage then sat and drank some juice and told each other stories about their adventures for the day. Forgotten about all thoughts of the silver-haired, one-eyed shinobi. Delightful forgetfulness. The feeling of being completely ignorant and comforted only by the cozy darkness. However, as with everything worthwhile, it has to end suddenly. How did he get into this situation? Was it the most exquisite object he had ever laid eyes on, or was it the approaching doom? If he had to speculate, he would probably say the latter. He had become quite used to the prospect of certain death. Kakashi got up from the velvet couch in the Hokage's office, shook off the sleepy feeling. The fabled shinobi leaned against the plush cushions, a gloved hand massaging the sleep from his one sleeping eye. After the last vestige of sleep had vanished, he noticed that there were now 3 people in his company instead of just 1. The man with the silver hair asked sheepishly, "How long was I out?" A laughing voice replied, "Oh, I'd say about 15 minutes. "Oh my goodness, big brother, go take a nap later." Gar and I are dying to eat some ramen, exclaimed a boy with golden hair. Gar, Naruto sheepishly recalled, putting his hand behind his head. Yeah, the old man said we should change Gaara's name, but I kinda already told the guys from my class his name, so we can't do that anymore. Raising an eyebrow, Kakashi said, oh, is that right? Yeah, but I gave him a nickname. So now instead of Gaara, I'm going to call him Gar. The Jonin remained silent for a moment, considering something, and then Kakashi slowly nodded his head. Well, that should work. Shinobi are known for going by their nicknames more than their actually names. Naruto grinned broadly and turned to face his smaller friend, giving him a victory pose. See, told Yagar. Naruto turned back to face the man who was getting up slowly once more and continued. So anyways, why did you pass out, Kakashi? Well, you see, the one-eyed Shinobi said, laughing as he struggled to come up with a convincing justification when the drama's source reappeared in his field of vision. The Hokage explained, holding up a red-covered book with an explicit warning on the cover. It was this, Naruto, that caused your dear old brother to lose consciousness. Gaara's head cocked to the side in perplexity. A book. Everyone turned to look at the source of the sound, and there was a sharp intake of breath. Kakashi, horrified, looked angrily at the older man as he smoked his pipe. Hatake the last, put that away. Lord Hokage, if you're not going to share, don't show it to me. He growled, pointing an accusing finger at the older man, who was giggling at the disproportionate response. The blonde sweat dropped and shook his head shamefully. Kakashi, a silly old book made you faint. Kakashi declared as if it were a serious matter and praised the red book as if it were a gift from God himself. Naruto, this book is not by any means silly. It is the retelling of a passionate love story between a noble shinobi and his princess. Yet, since you are so young, you could never truly understand or appreciate the truly wondrous meaning behind this marvelous book. Naruto leaned over to Gaara and whispered, remember when I said that Kakashi reads weird books? While covering his mouth with his hand, the boy with the raccoon-like eyes looked up at the blonde with curiosity and nodded slowly. Holding the wide-eyed red head by the shoulders, Naruto whispered, well, this is one of them. Don't read them, Gaara, or else you'll turn into a weirdo like Kakashi. Just before taking a blow to the back of the head, a pair of hands rubbed aimlessly at the throbbing blonde-haired skull and glared at the assailant, saying, ah. What was that for ya, jerk? Kakashi angrily shot back, for being rude, I do not read weird books. I read books filled with passion. Naruto started whining, yeah, whatever. Can we go eat now? I'm starving. Alright, proceed, I'll catch up soon. The silver-haired shinobi replied, rolling his eyes. Okay, come on Gar, let's go grab some ramen. A blonde torpedo emerged from the door once more, closely followed by a red streak. With a previously unseen expression on his cloth-covered face, Kakashi turned back to face his superior, waiting for the door to be firmly closed behind them. When Sarutobi saw that look in his shinobi's eye, he knew that all laughing matters had been left with the boys who were leaving. Sandaime sighed and repeated, even if you don't want this book, Kakashi, you must accept all the conditions. All of them. He could feel his aging shoulders straining under the weight of his long and turbulent life at that moment. The atmosphere in the office was one of tense silence. A long moment later, the dreaded copy nin's eyes lit up with a glimmer of resolve. Yes, I understand. I don't really agree that this is a wise choice, but if you believe so, then so be it. The Hokage's wise face had a faint smile that seemed to be filled with relief and fondness. I thank you for your vote of confidence, Kakashi. Now on with you, your new mission is waiting for you. Right, now hand it over. In his brief and pitiful existence, he had never tasted anything as delicious as this. He now realized the necessity of the inhumane speed at which his companion consumed the divine dinner that was placed before them. Naruto said, it's amazing, isn't it, Gar? While biting into a noodle. The two boys enthusiastically nodded in response, too preoccupied to notice the older boy's unusually thoughtful demeanor due to their intense suppertime concentration. But eventually, the older Jinchurikin had noticed his elder brother's peculiar disposition after his hunger had finally started to subside. Yo, Kakashi, something wrong? Kakashi abruptly brought his thoughts to an end and turned to stare for a moment at the two boys who were seated comfortably next to him. Huh, oh, no, not quite. It's actually something that I have to address once we're done here, okay? Naruto lifted his eyebrows and gave a slow, unsure nod of comprehension. Yeah, sure. Well, I'm good. What about you, Gar? After putting his bowl back on the shabby wooden counter of the ramen establishment, the Suna refugee nodded and said, "I'm also finished." Kakashi, a wrinkle appearing in his visible eye, chuckled softly at how quickly the two boys had consumed an absurd quantity of ramen. "Great, then let's get a move on, boys." As Kakashi turned to leave, a cry of outrage interrupted him. Barking accusingly at the man who was backing away, Naruto said, "Hey! Don't forget you're paying." With a tone of pretend hurt, Kakashi answered, "Naruto, I've never forgotten to pay." Staring suspiciously at the silver-haired man, the blonde countered, "Yeah right. Tell that to Gamashin. I've had to pay a lot of times cause you always disappear when I'm not looking. If you would just hone in your sensory skills, I wouldn't get away so easily." Kakashi sighed and shook his head of spiked hair in shame. Shocked by the insult, the young shinobi .to.be stared at it like a lost fish. "Oh, now you're making fun of my ninja skills. Bring it on, old geezer. I can take you." The everlasting proprietor of Ichiraku's Ramen nervously told his quarreling regulars, "Naruto. Kakashi, I hate to interrupt, but you're scaring away my customers, again." Seemingly heartless, Kakashi diverted his lone attention from his young apprentice to survey the ramen stand. To his dismay, he discovered that they had, in fact, scared or irritated the great majority of those present. "Looks like we're causing a scene. Sorry about that, we'll be going now." The two boys under his supervision hopped off their stools and followed him as he approached the exit. Later, "Old man," Naruto waved to a very tired-looking cook, flashing a big, sly smile. As the three strolled along the somewhat congested street, Naruto became aware of which way Kakashi was guiding them, toward the compounds of the shinobi clan. "Why are we going this way? His apartment is on the other side of town." "Hey big brother, where are we going?" "You'll see, Naruto. You'll see soon enough." His response conveyed to Naruto that he would not be receiving any answers to any of his questions. They walked down the empty street without saying anything more. Even then, people rarely ventured into this part of the village. The clan's area was off limits to civilians at night and open during the day. The gleaming lights of the affluent village were left behind as they ventured deeper inside. This was the area of the village where the woods got bigger and thicker. If you didn't know where you were going, you could easily get lost, find yourself on some clan's territory, and possibly end up on the wrong side of a knife. The three men soon discovered themselves on a dirt road. The two young boys continued to follow their elder down the overgrown path even though the pavement they had been walking on had abruptly ended. The zealous whiskered boy had finally been defeated by his own curiosity after all this wandering. "Kakashi, where are we going?" Naruto asked, looking up at the woods that were bathed in sunlight. "We're almost there. Keep in mind that a good shinobi needs patience," Kakashi said, letting out a sigh and giving the blonde a soothing pat on the top of his head. Rolling his deep blue eyes in annoyance, Naruto shot back, "Peesh. Whatever, I want to know where you're taking us." "Home. Home?" the boy with the whiskers asked, freezing at the response and staring at the masked man with incredulity. His other two companions simply looked at him curiously. Kakashi forced the boy to move forward until he passed a curb on the path, forcing him to stop sighing and say, "Look over there, Naruto." "Huh. Wah. Wow, this place is huge." As Gaara approached the two, she noticed what looked to be a sizable two-story wooden home. The redhead questioned, "Is this your home, Kakashi?" as he was admiring the stunning structure. With a glazed gaze, the Jonin gave the house a slight shake of his head. "No, it's our home now." Naruto turned to face Kakashi, but his gaping was cut short by his answer. "What? But you live in an apartment, just like me." "Well, I used to live here a long time ago. There was a problem." "Why'd you stop living here then?" Though Kakashi was being evasive and only did so to avoid confrontation, Naruto was unable to piece together exactly what was going on. When Kakashi looked up at the sunlight-filled canopy, his expression became more melancholy. Through the thick green leaves, he could see white, fluffy puffs of clouds floating lazily in the air in some spots. "Something really sad happened here and the memories were too painful for me to stay," he finally responded. The three of them were lost in their own thoughts and there was a moment of silence. Each as painful as the other, but some far more sorrowful than the other. "Oh, so I guess it's Gaara's in your house now?" was the last thing Naruto said aloud while he was fixated on the structure. His older brother looked at him questioningly, but he refused to look. When Naruto saw Gaara and Kakashi truly being able to live together and become a true family, he realized he was acting foolishly and immaturely. "No, it's our house now," You're living with us here as well, brat, Kakashi said with a slight laugh. A pair of deep blue eyes widened slightly at the statement, and the child with the whiskers replied incredulously. Seriously? Yes, seriously. That's so awesome. Let's hurry up and go inside already. Naruto, wait. There's an alarm system set up. If you're not careful, you'll set it off. But the blonde, whiskered boy charged straight toward the front door, so the warning was too little, too late. His initial error. The homestead shook with an explosion and the sound of big wood pieces breaking, as the overly enthusiastic student from the Blonde Academy was blasted into the nearby trees. A streak of golden yellow flew straight past his companions, who had stayed put safely in their previous positions. Idiot, I told you to wait, exclaimed Kakashi, furiously witnessing the destruction of his house and his young charge in front of his eyes. Suddenly, from the trees came the muffled, nearly incomprehensible cry, "Brother! I'm stuck." The silver-haired young man sighed with annoyance as he and Gaara searched for their troublemaking brother. You're just a pain sometimes, brat. Naruto's hushed cries, "Stop being mean and help me out," guide the two on their quest to an extremely humorous scene. There stood the young, blonde troublemaker of Konoha, his head firmly wedged in a tree trunk. The two unharmed men did nothing but watch as Naruto made a vain attempt to break free his whiskered head from the wooden prison's strong hold. Grasping the tree branches to get to the boy who was hanging, fortunately only a few feet above the ground, Kakashi said, "Well, you're the one that went and got yourself in there." The two men were startled by a sudden sharp intake of breath and exclaimed, "Kakashi! There's a squirrel in here. It looks mad." With a suppressed chuckle, the final Hitaki took a good position on a branch in an attempt to seize Naruto's body and, ideally, free him. "Okay, hold still. This will probably hurt you a lot more than me. Poor squirrel. You probably traumatized it." The silver-haired young man started to pull on the trapped boy after feigning sympathy. "Aghh, careful. Don't pull too hard, Kakashi. OWW. That hurts you, bastard. This squirrel is trying to claw my eyes out," was the reaction he got from each pull, which felt like sandpaper rubbing raw against his skin and creating a clawing frenzy in the other occupant of the hole. Kakashi laughed at the misfortune that had befallen his sensei's son and said, "You know, insulting the only one capable of helping you out of there isn't the wisest decision." Emphasizing every word, Naruto yelled, "Shut it and get me out of here. Why don't you use your head for once and use a substitution jutsu to get out of there?" When the blonde boy with his head stuck in a tree realized how easy the solution had been, there was a stunned silence. After a pop and a puff of smoke, Naruto emerged from his wooden shack. However, he now had noticeable deep scratches all over his face. The three occupants of the land were startled by a very dishonorable brown squirrel that leapt straight up into the top of the tree and then bounded away on nearby branches. The squirrel let out a shriek. After allowing the moment to sink in, Kakashi looked back at the blonde boy with ruffles, and his expression became a little smug upon realizing how mischievous the boy had become. He had multiple claw scratches running from his neck up, and his hair was singed. He looked like a chew toy that had been burned and mauled. This is why you don't go charging into shinobi houses. They are always laid out with traps for intruders. Naruto crossed his hands over his chest, annoyed at Kakashi's smug expression and those horrible demon-spawned vermin, saying, "Whatever, stupid squirrel." Suddenly, the sound of chimes tinkling could be heard as the two men argued. They turned in unison to witness an uncommon sight. Their adopted little brother laughed in a way they had never heard him do before. The boy from Suna with a raccoon-eyed expression was holding onto Naruto's cloak tightly, almost as if it were his lifeline, due to the intense shaking that his fits of laughter caused in his small frame. A pair of smiles, one visible and the other concealed, burst into the unobservant boy's face. Kakashi's one and only visible eye was crinkling up in amusement. There should always be warmth and laughter around a child. Abruptly, the boy who was laughing was joined by a louder and more annoying chortle of laughter. Naruto laughed alongside his new younger brother and thought, "Oh man, I bet that was hilarious from Gaara's point of view, wasn't it?" Gaara was reduced to nodding in response to the incessant bursts of laughter that engulfed him each time he thought back to the incident in which he had witnessed his new-found blonde brother being blown into a squirrel's nest and subsequently attacked by the same squirrel. Enthralled with the sight the two created, the Jonin found himself wishing he had ever purchased a camera as he remembered, or rather realized, that he actually did own one. Both boys were laughing, curiously staring at the silver-haired man with the shiny black camera, until there was a sudden click of the shutter. "Is that a camera?" a bewildered Naruto questioned. "Kakashi acquired a camera when?" Yes, it is. When did you buy it? Kakashi laughed happily, glad to finally have an answer. Oh, it came with special limited edition of Icha Icha. I'd almost forgotten I even had it. The little blonde boy arched an eyebrow and peered at the Jonin, a look of confusion on his facial whiskers. It came with a book. What kind of books do you read? Oh, you're finally interested in it then. I've been waiting a long time for this day to come, young one. The man with silver hair was ecstatic about the idea of giving his younger brother the wonderful gift of Ika Ika. Naruto nervously retreated, trying to deflect the man who was approaching him with an orange book in his hands by raising his hands in a conciliatory gesture. Kakashi was beginning to feel afraid of the expression on his face. You know what, never mind, I don't do reading. With a sickeningly sweet voice, Kakashi urged, just give it a try. I know you'll love it as much as I do. Naruto exclaimed in shock, no one could love it as much as you do. It's kinda creepy how much you do love it, ya weirdo. Gaara pointed off into the distance and said to the quarreling couple, I hate to interrupt, but shouldn't we put out the fire? What fire? Both Kakashi and Naruto exclaimed at the same time, pausing their current task to confront the red-haired boy who was drenched in perspiration. Gaara did nothing more than gesture with a finger toward their rear. He pointed, and they turned to face that direction as one. They could see the burning, would-have been future home in the hellish orange distance. Startled, the two ran back, with Gaara following slowly in their wake, and discovered there was nothing to be done to save the lovely house that was now in ruins and engulfed in a consuming red blaze. After surveying the damage caused by his impatience, Naruto nervously laughed and scratched his sheepish head. Ha ha, did I do that? He asked. Gesturing back toward the forested conflagration, the one-eyed Jonin let out one of his numerous learned water ninjutsus, putting out the last of the flames. Tapping his index finger against his cloth-covered chin, Kakashi thought to himself, well now that's taken care of. How am I going to explain this to the Hokage? Naruto moaned. Do we have to tell him? Yes, he'll be coming around one of these days to check up on you guys. I have to let him know that now we'll be living in my apartment for the time being. Gaara. Naruto, you'll just have to remain in your apartment. The bearded blonde gazes downcastly at the smoking, ash-colored remnants of her once beautiful house. But can't we fix it? We could. Kakashi sighed, massaging his rapidly aching head in an attempt to get rid of the impending headache. But that would require a large sum of money. I don't want to go broke trying to fix an old house, you know. Gaara asked the silver-headed shinobi, what about building a new one? It would still be pretty expensive. Until I can make a sufficient amount of money, we'll just have to continue living in the apartments. Naruto pouted and started to retrace their steps, going back the way they had come. That's not cool. As he followed the melancholic blonde, Kakashi mockingly said, says the one that blew up the house. Gaara was standing right beside him. With a childlike annoyance, Naruto crossed his arms over his chest and cried back, I said I was sorry. He knew he was wrong, but was there anything else he could do? Yes, but sorry isn't buying us a new house, you know. Naruto lost all self-control and angrily yelled, geez, what more do you want from me? To the Jonin. Naruto waited for Kakashi's angry question to be answered, as though he was truly considering the response. I want you to promise me that you will finally start paying more attention to what I or other shinobi say to you. You have a terrible habit of acting without thinking first, and what happened today is proof of that. Can you promise me this? Naruto's wide-eyed, bright blue oceanic eyes widened upon hearing his brother's request. It was true that his impatience had caused their new home to be destroyed because he had disregarded Kakashi's warning. It was easy. He was capable. If he set his mind to something, he could accomplish anything. Determination. Filled blue eyes stared at the oldest of the three men as they made their way back to the village. I swear it, Kakashi. I will listen to anything you say and take it to heart. It's a promise, and I don't go back on my promises because that's my ninja way. The declaration was met with a fond smile from the young Hitaki. He had witnessed the way the young child was punishing himself inside for his error. Giving Naruto a way to make up for it was the least he could do. That, along with the fact that he desperately needed the brat to start listening to him. As he lovingly ruffled his mop of blonde hair, Kakashi said to the boy with whiskers, yeah, I know. Now let's get going. I'm tired. This helped to calm any negative feelings that had been running through him. Naruto nodded, his grin going from ear to ear, and turned to look at the red-haired new addition to their makeshift family. Let's go home, Gaara. The shocked boy from Suna, who had watched the scene unfold before in complete fascination, was approached by a small, tanned hand. But soon, the other smaller gloved hand was joined by a larger one. Gazing upon the outstretched hands, Gaara knew at that very moment that he had been correct to entrust his future to the two Konoha shinobi. Despite their imperfections and conflicts, they welcomed him with open arms. How much more was he to ask for? Yes, let's go home. Kakashi had made them several cups of instant ramen once he got the boys settled in his apartment. Naruto had refused to sleep in his own, because, for some inexplicable reason, the two of them shared an overwhelming craving for that cheap pasta. This is my fault, Naruto. This is how Gaara didn't seem before. Kakashi was thinking about how he was going to tell the Hokage that he wasn't going to be able to fulfill one of the conditions as he observed, somewhat amused, the two boys as they eagerly devoured their dinner. That day earlier. There are a few things you need to do, Kakashi, in order for this to work out well for us. I will first appoint you as Gaara's official legal guardian. The villagers will refer to him as Garakan Hitaki. Does this seem reasonable to you? Following a brief period of introspection, Kakashi slowly nodded his head. Yes, Hokage, what are your other conditions? After inhaling deeply from his preferred tobacco, the Hokage went on, saying, second, I want you to retake residence in the Hitaki estate. You will require the space because, although not legally, I am also giving you custody of Naruto. Shocked by the directive, Kakashi objected, saying, there. Why is it necessary for it to exist? I have enough cash to purchase a house in the village. I know you do, but until all the necessary arrangements are in place, I can't take the chance that others will learn about Gaara's existence. Being tucked away in the most remote parts of the clan residences makes the Hitaki estate an ideal location. The existence of it is even unknown to the older generations. It could not be avoided. Yes, the Hokage was correct. I see your point. Well, I may not like it, but if it is for the best then alright, it shall be done. Hiruzen drove the last nail in the coffin, placated for the time being. Alright, so the last requirement I have for you is that those two boys must know what they are holding inside of them without any justification. Recognized. Crystal, please. Given that neither of them is ready to learn such a thing, that is most likely the best course of action. What time will Jiraiya be here? In a few days, maybe even a week or two. I want you to keep Gaara hidden for the time being. Although Naruto already revealed that little detail, the clan boys might forget about him if we can keep him hidden long enough. Convincing his straying student to come back had been quite the battle, but his assistance was required, and not even Jiraiya was heartless enough to abandon his village, much less his sensei. Alright, sounds like a plan. The older man stopped the one-eyed shinobi in his tracks and glared at him, immobilizing him. Finally, Kakashi, please handle my book with caution. The copy is a limited edition. Well, he wasn't really able to do much. Sarutobi was going to be very, very angry. Why was it that anything that had to do with the blonde pip Squeak always made him the target of a verbal abuse from the greatest shinobi alive? However, the book was undamaged and in perfect condition. I'm so screwed. With a sigh, Kakashi turned away from the boys chatting and instead chose to observe the dusk outside his living room window. What should he do at this point? It was the Hokage's fault. The council would start to have doubts about Naruto's ancestry if Gaara was spotted with him before all the required steps had been taken to guarantee his safety. Oh sensei, you didn't make it easy on me. His train of thought was abruptly interrupted by a loud, demanding voice. Yo bro. Seconds, please. Likewise, Gaara does. Alright, calm down. Give me a few minutes to make another batch. Kakashi sighed and got to his feet, wondering instead about the moment he was made into a 7-year-old slave. The sun was barely breaking through the far horizon with its brilliant rays when a certain silver-haired Jonin sauntered down the early morning street toward the Hokage Tower, a book open in front of his face. He had taken care to leave before his rowdier guest noticed him walking away, which wasn't too hard at all. Naruto slept like a rock submerged in water. Conversely, Gaara had been soundly asleep, as one might anticipate, curled up with a book on his dark red couch. He was lucky that the redhead wasn't as incredibly curious as he knew a certain blonde was, so he was able to leave without any problems. However, not before giving the boys directions on how to get Gaara. Before long, his journey through the village came to an end, and he was standing in front of the wooden door leading to the strongest shinobi's office in Konoha. After a few forceful knocks on the door, the terrifying man's sanctuary was acknowledged by a voice on the other side. The old man, who was sitting in front of him with a pile of papers, appeared a little surprised to see him. Kakashi? Why have you come here at this early hour of the day? The Jonin laughed awkwardly, rubbing his head sheepishly as he attempted to play down the horror that was about to break out. "Well, you see, there's been a complication with the conditions you set." "What complications?" The instant the words clicked, Hiruzen's voice became serious. Kakashi refrained from whining at the abrupt tone. How do I put this? After giving it some thought, he concluded that since he was also in trouble, there was no need to sugarcoat things. Naruto destroyed the estate. Demolished. Not even a full day has passed. This is getting way too old for me. The Hokage cried out in shock and then let out a weary sigh. He unintentionally triggered one of the house's alarms, blowing up the whole structure. It's no longer livable. That boy. How are you going to address this? Scheme? I'm not sure. Kakashi shrugged and stepped back from the weary-looking man. The powerful Sandame's elderly face flashed a tiny smile. He was too familiar with his shinobi, past and present. Lucky for you, I do have a contingency plan in case something like this happened. With a heavy sigh, the Hokage got up, moved to his towering bookshelf, and took out a folded piece of paper that had been wedged between two of the larger volumes. Please take this. It is a set of instructions to the new residents. It would be best if you moved there, but I was hoping to give this to Naruto himself when he was older. This was an entirely different course of events. You don't want to try and fix the estate? With calculating eyes, the older man watched the bewildered young man in front of him and slowly shook his head. Even though he was elderly, he was not mentally deranged. Well, I could have one of the Anbu help you reconstruct it, but that would be a gross misuse of his skills. Tenzo didn't really get to use his specific skill set all that often, though. Yeah, you're probably right, but why did you want to give this to Naruto? Kakashi, these are directions to the secret estate that my successor had built. Hiruzen responded, pointing to the small piece of paper that was in the Jonin's gloved hands. A covert estate. That was nonsensical. Nothing had ever been withheld from him by his sensei before. Well, there were a few rare occasions when he intended to purposefully surprise him. Sensei constructed an estate. When? He never mentioned it to me. The elder Sarutobi hummed in understanding and took a puff from his favorite pipe before answering. It's not surprising he didn't. Not even I was informed until a few months prior to the attack by him. Don't read too much into this, Kakashi. Hiruzen swiftly added, narrowing his eyes slightly at the young shinobi's visible eyes' conflicting emotions. Make sure that Naruto's mistakes are not repeated by going to the house first. Still, you might want to move quickly. You don't want to leave those boys alone for too long, and it might take you some time. Very well, Minato chose the location, finding it was difficult even for me. With a suppressed sigh of frustration at the lack of explanation, Kakashi accepted that the mystery would have to wait until later. Where is it located? It will point you in the direction of the clan district's periphery on the paper. It is far into the forested region to the west. Kakashi surmised that the peculiar map concealed an encryption after glancing at the yellowing paper he was carrying around informally. Well, I best be going then. Good luck, Kakashi. Before you bring the boys here, why don't you check around the area? Perhaps you will discover something worthwhile. It was difficult to ignore the hint in his voice. Behaving unawares, the Jonin bid farewell with a cheery, right. A whisper of leaves heralded the silver-haired man's departure. Kakashi ran from building to building, replaying the conversation as he reappeared on a nearby rooftop. Sensei had left something for him to discover. He was certain of it. It had taken them 2 minutes to get to the clan districts, but it had taken far longer to read the directions on the sheet. How the hell do I read this thing? Not only were there no arrows and no pattern, but there were also no clear instructions. The only thing he had to go on were the scrawls that the Sandame had most likely written for his own benefit. The only thing guiding him off was the dark, black dot that showed where he was going. However, it wouldn't have been too much of a hassle if it had been in a city with clearly marked buildings. Sadly, his sensei had shown himself to be shrewd and had chosen to construct his enigmatic estate far into the forest that encircled the clan districts. Within the village, there were places that weren't even gated. The sheet he was handed contained combinations of seals he had never even seen, on top of the possibility that the estate was in the village's deepest trenches. Man, this is confusing. Sensei, you may have been even more paranoid than me sometimes. Kakashi eventually located the location where the spot indicated after spending a good hour lost in the shadowy evergreens. He nearly started crying when he saw what he found. Before him, looming large and magnificent, almost as though to mock his very existence, was a clearing of extraordinary proportions. This is insane. What is it, if he was making fun of me for showing up late to his meetings so many times? I will simply arrive 1 or 2 hours later. Kakashi looked around the large clearing he had fallen into, unimpressed, brooding. The retired Anbu looked at the paper again, questioning it, trying to make sense of what he was in. You must look underneath, Kakashi. The words of his sensei reverberated in the shadowy depths of his mind. Things were never made easy by his sensei. He would constantly put him to the test with sly traps or puzzles. There was never anything easy. Something was lacking for him, but what was it? Upon closer examination, his dark brown eyes suddenly widened with comprehension, and that was it. The location, he realized, was something immediately adjacent to the clearing instead of in the center of what should have been it. Aligning himself with the sheet, his roving eyes fell upon a lofty, old maple tree, its majestic foliage at its peak. When Kakashi arrived at the base covered in bark, he raised his headband and once more revealed his chakra. Consuming gift to the public. It was a welcome relief to be able to see the tall vegetation with clarity again. A scroll as plain as day was concealed in one of the trunk's highest fissures. Kakashi reached a branch that would make it easy for him to grasp the parchment with a grace and fluidity that would make any woman jealous. The seasoned shinobi was startled as a blur of brown shot up his arm and around his shoulders just as his gloved hand closed on it firmly. Had someone witnessed the catastrophic downfall of the once feared Kopinen, they would not have survived to share the story. Kakashi lifted himself to sit on his ass and rubbed his aching head, trying to straighten the spinning world again after waking up from the unexpected daze. He could see the retreating vermin that had knocked him off the branch and given him a glare of annoyance. As for the squirrel, he was completely terrified and fled as quickly as his tiny feet could carry him. The silver-haired man got up and started to dust himself off, simply brushing off the strange and embarrassing incident and wondering if it was the same squirrel that Naruto had seen the day before. Now that would just be quite the coincidence. After attempting to keep himself as tidy as possible, Kakashi momentarily hesitated before opening the threadbare scroll. Although there was some damage to the ends, he wasn't concerned about it. But what could be sealed inside the scroll was what did. He was familiar with the symbols of the standard storage seal, but there were several changes on this one. However, this was hardly shocking as his sensei enjoyed playing around and making his own seals. To his surprise, when he fully exposed the apparently aged parchment, the inside was as pristine as if it had been purchased from a store. On the outside, though, the story was quite different. What kind of seal did Sensei use to keep this scroll from decaying over time? There were straightforward instructions inside that said to place on large space, step back a few feet, or at least 10 feet, next, release. Kakashi raised a skeptical eyebrow but still obeyed, not wanting to see what might happen if he didn't. He walked to the center of the clearing and centered the unfolded scroll there before backing away the designated distance. With his hands raised in a sign of release, the shinobi braced himself for what was to come. He never would have imagined that what happened a moment later would be possible. A certain Elder Cage, in the meantime, was thinking to himself as he took a brief break from the enormous amount of paperwork piled up on his desk, about how the young Jonin he had sent on a sort of mission would handle the eventuality that he actually succeeded in finding the Yondaime's estate. He may just faint again. Within the walls of one of the most powerful men in the shinobi nations, there was a laughing sound.
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.